It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell are here. Well, actually, they're in Seattle for the Ignite conference. Microsoft made a ton of AI announcements. It's copiloting all the things. They'll tell you about that. .NET Conf also this week. Richard will have something to say about that. New releases of Windows 11, Xbox Series X. We'll get Paul's review of Modern Warfare 3. I don't know how he feels about it. We'll find out. That and a whole lot more coming up. Let's go to Seattle with Windows Weekly next.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell, episode 855, recorded Wednesday, November 15th, 2023, live from Ignite. This episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by Pfingst Canary. Detect attackers long before they dig in. Get alerted when your system's breached. Just 3 minutes of setup, no ongoing overhead, and nearly zero false positives. For 10% off and a 60-day money-back guarantee, go to canary.tools/twit and enter the code TWIT in the How Did You Hear About Us box. And by Melissa, the global leader in contact data quality. Bad data is bad business, so make sure your customer contact data is up to date. Get started today with over 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show we cover the latest news from Microsoft. And I think I can tell from our hosts, Richard Campbell and Paul Thurrott, that they are at Microsoft Ignite in Seattle. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, hello.
You are in a terrarium somewhere deep within the Redmond Empire.
Yeah, we're in a people aquarium for sure.
Are people staring at you?
Not at the moment
yet. We're in the far corner of the top floor of this building.
You got to stay on that, Mike.
Okay.
Yep. So it will be a while before.
But there is a CIO summit right across from us, so I expect CIOs to be staring at us soon.
Mm-hmm. How exciting! That is so exciting. Well, I don't have separate. I don't have to. I can't do separate because you're all in the same room. So
one camera. We're all
one camera, and I can't even separate your microphones. So you just.
I've got a local 2-track recording if you want it.
I think we're good. I think it sounds all right. So
these S7Bs are pretty good. They're nice mics.
Oh, I love them. I noticed that Microsoft announced they're going to Copilot, call it Copilot everywhere. Is that one of the things they announced at Ignite?
And how many shots did we take when Jared was saying Copilot over and over and over again?
If we had taken shots every time they said Copilot, we would both be dead.
Yeah. There was a lot of Copilot.
But you know what? It's okay, because for once Microsoft has a good brand. They're really running with it. Maybe a little too much, but...
well, I think they're stopping using the word Bing.
Right. Which, by the way, since February, I've been like, nope, you don't go to market with the name Bing. You can't do it. So
no Bing AI.
No Bing.
It's Copilot. And let's face it, the Bing name
tainted.
It's not good.
Yeah. It's not a Zune exactly, but kind of, right?
Kind of nice. Yeah. So, that doesn't mean any feature differences, right? It's just.
Right.
Yeah,
but it's a bit of clarification. Remember back in September, they semi-clarified it. And then I think now they finally come full circle, which is just the base layer is called Copilot. It's in everything, all the Copilots. That feature that was called Bing Chat is now called Copilot for Bing. And, or just Copilot actually. And that's just the name. It's the foundational layer for all the Copilots. And then as you go out to Copilot for Microsoft 365 or Copilot in Windows 11 or whatever it might be, there will be additional capabilities built on top that are kind of context specific to that product.
There's still too many Copilots, but they're trying. At least they're aware of it.
Literally hundreds.
There's literally hundreds.
Yeah.
That, he kept saying, "No, we're putting these together. Like you won't be a problem."
Yep.
The work and home switch made me sad.
Yeah,
because it's just like accounts, right? You know, when you go to log into a Microsoft property, it's like, is this a home account or
is Big Brother watching or is my corporation watching?
Yes,
it's a matter of oversight.
Yeah, which surveillance system would you like?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, surveillance as a service. Yeah,
that's it. Anyway, and too many studios. That was the other one.
That was the other one. Yep,
a lot of studios.
A lot of new language, by the way. So, Leo, are you familiar with the term small language model? Is this something
Oh yeah, because I usually work with tubby language models, and which is the other end of the language model weight spectrum.
Yeah. So as these things, as Microsoft's AI services go live, they're coming around to this notion that this is going to cost us a lot of money. And so we need to work on hybrid, but also just local AI. And that small language models will make sense locally, but also workload specific cloud things, depending on what the needs are, you can get away with something smaller. It's more efficient, beneficial all around. So that's another term that I don't know that Microsoft was so big on before this show. And what was the other one?
Grounded search, grounded web.
So AI, this notion that AI models are grounded in, so like a public AI service, like what used to be Bing Chat, which is now just Copilot, is grounded in the web, is the terminology.
Right.
And then, of course, the Microsoft Graph stuff, I should say Copilot for Microsoft 365, I guess, is technically grounded in Microsoft Graph, right? It's the internal corporate data. That's how I understand it. It's kind of a fog of war thing still, but
I am feeling like it's language designed to soothe.
Yes.
Right. That everyone's got some technology. So let's use words that make people.
We have
calm.
a gentle Copilot salve we can put right on you.
You'll be all right.
Yep.
Not as soothing as Bob, but calming.
Yep.
Your AI overlords are here, and they're going to be kind.
They're going to be benign. Yeah. I think a lot of the keynote was kind of around addressing the concerns about AI, right? Both for people and for companies. This is going to be a debate we have for years. This is not going away.
Well, and if there's anything you got from this, it's like Satya's all in.
You think?
Just so all in.
Well, they're smart because they have a lead here, right? Their relationship with OpenAI gave them,
and arguably for the first time in a long time.
Yeah,
they also have that kind of unique combination of capabilities and infrastructure, and surprising for the Microsoft of what I will now call the previous era, the kind of cloud era of Microsoft, a real desire to take a leadership position, right?
Yeah,
to be out there.
This is not the consent decree Microsoft did.
Right.
The supercomputer statement was interesting.
Yeah.
I did an interview with Rasinovich a few months back, and he talked about when they built GPT-3. And at the time, because they had to harness a whole bunch of Azure to do the build, it was the 5th largest supercomputer in the world at that time. They, of course, then immediately repurposed the gear. And it hit me that, the fact that they have all of these computing centers means they can make a supercomputer on demand.
Like on the fly.
Yeah. Other than they have customers that are trying to use those machines.
That's why Xbox xCloud went down. It was like
must be it.
They were building the supercomputer.
We were busy making a supercomputer.
Yeah.
So Satya talked about making the 3rd largest supercomputer. It makes me wonder if that wasn't the build for GPT-4, because they've been pretty secretive on the data about GPT-4.
Yep.
And of course, because all the supercomputers in that class, like number 1 and number 2, they're both American. One's in Illinois. The other one's in Kentucky.
Right.
And they're purpose-built machines. Like, it occurs to me that Microsoft, once they get to a certain state with their cloud, could, every time there's a new top supercomputer machine, just run the workload on Azure and beat it.
Yeah.
And then, okay, now we're number 1 again. And then they build a bigger one, and then they do it again.
Yep. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised.
It would be fascinating. Just,
right.
It's a different way of thinking about supercomputing, that you basically have a dynamically repurposable machine.
Yeah. It's a supercomputer for the cloud era. Basically.
Yeah. Totally different.
Yeah.
What else?
Luke? What else? Oh, yeah. So there's a bunch of, obviously, well, maybe not obviously. I tend to focus on the client stuff, but there'll be a few. We'll throw some Azure stuff in here. There was some interesting stuff there. So the Copilot rebranding 2.0, I think, was the rebranding clarification, I think, was important and probably well explained. Jared Spataro does a great job of just speaking in general, but he did a good job of explaining it, I thought. Copilot for Microsoft 365 launched earlier this month, and I should say launched with air quotes. For enterprises, right? Companies that had 300 seats or more. They didn't really talk about the expansion of that, although that will have to happen eventually. They did talk about this notion of it receiving the plugin support, which we always knew was coming. So that's going to get much more interesting with access to third-party data sources, right? Not just the Microsoft crowd.
I'm wondering if they just need to run some instrumentation on 300 seat or so and say, like, are they getting good results?
Yeah. This is like when they first rolled out Azure, it was sort of, let's just see what happens. You know, we're going to send you fake bills. You can see what that looks like. You can give us feedback. We'll see. I think we're in that phase with this stuff. Yeah.
They definitely want to, I mean, you saw the list of companies that are Copilot powered. And those must have been that pioneer group.
The ones
a few months ago.
That's right. They didn't explain. They never said any names, but now we know who they are.
Did. So you got to bet that they said, "Hey, we'll let you in on the early trial, but you got to give us your logo to use at a keynote, right?" Which obviously they did. But those are all huge seat counts, and that to me, it's like you think about how much data you need to really have the LLM do something useful for you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I'm wondering if they're instrumenting a snot out of that, just watching like how do these models behave when you look at corporate data. What's it going to be like when the seat count? When you talk about small business, it's 4 people.
Right. What kind of data?
Yeah. What kind of results are you going to get?
I think the small business stuff is going to skew toward the same thing they're doing with individuals, which is you basically have this OneDrive or SharePoint kind of shared data store. You have email contacts, you have calendars, events, you have had meetings and so forth. We'll see. I don't know. I've not been able to test that stuff, so I am curious.
Yeah, no, I just got notified as the regional director. I'm going to get it.
Yeah, nice.
And I'm a small enterprise,
right.
So, yeah, we'll at least have some view into all of that.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the loop part? You watched that loop part. I did that.
Loop is out. Except I was so disappointed because you have to have a commercial account, right? Or use it on mobile. It's not available for...
Loop is generally available for commercial. So this is the Microsoft 365 commercial customers. Mm-hmm. If you are an individual, because I'm in Loop with my Microsoft account as well.
Yeah.
I guess it's technically still in preview, but you should be able to access it on the web and on mobile. But I could be wrong about that. I am using it on mobile for sure.
Sure.
Loop is, what we've kind of known it to be for the past, several months, year, which is a Microsoft's version of kind of a Notion from a UI perspective. Yeah. It's a new style of working and collaborating. New to Microsoft, I should say, right? So obviously they have these legacy tools that are very popular, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, et cetera. So this is kind of that new, note-taking style app with, modular components and draws in different data sources if that's what you want in a company. I'm actually surprised they didn't go with the consumer version first. It would have been easier.
Yeah.
But I'd like it. My experience has been that it's unreliable and buggy.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't had any problems with it. I just don't like the threatening messages you keep sending about.
Well, that's
you're using a trial.
Yeah, exactly.
And then of course they try and soften it with like everything will be fine, but you're using a trial. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm not using a trial. I have an E5.
Right.
Come on.
I have the simplest. Think about the notes we do for Windows Weekly, right? This is a Notion. It's just text. It's simple. But I have an even simpler thing I've been testing it with. I just have my gym machine list and what the weights are I use on each thing. And it's a little disarming to be at the gym and you hold up your phone and it won't load. It says something's wrong. And it's like, I just want to see a number. It's literally just a text file.
Yeah. This has got to be authentication.
Yeah.
Which does seem to be Microsoft's bugbear, even though they are working on it. But.
Yeah. So I could switch it over to my commercial account, maybe see if that's any better, but it's out. If you are in commercial, it's GA. So it's out there now. I don't know. I think, we'll see. See
if it's different.
Yeah.
I like it. Like I've now moved all the whiskey notes there.
Okay.
So
we'll get on Loop someday, Leo. One day you'll come in and we'll.
Is it as good as, we're using Notion now and I really like Notion. Obviously Loop is a direct clone of Notion, or is it?
Pretty close.
It is from a UI perspective. Yeah. I think that the architecture they built behind it is actually unique to Loop and is very powerful, but there's also a case to be made that kind of power isn't necessary for the type of thing we're doing. And maybe something simpler and more lightweight might be better. I mean, we'll test it.
Well, and then one would argue it's stepping on one note, but that's only when you're using that aspect. It's the Loop components where things get really interesting.
That's right.
The idea that I can make an Excel Loop component, right, and I can email it to someone,
Yeah.
But it's really emailing the loop component. So it appears like Excel.
This is, we talked about this probably a year ago.
Yeah.
In fact, it might have been exactly a year ago. This notion that loop, essentially, from an architectural perspective, is the Olay stuff from the late 90s, but applied not to just documents on your computer, but to your organization of the internet or whatever it might be. So it's like internet Olay. I don't know how else to say it. Right?
Yeah. And that was the whole idea is, hey, here's this older salesperson we've got. We can't get him into Teams. He just doesn't do it. He doesn't look there. He looks in his email. So I email him the current price list in a spreadsheet that automatically updates every time he opens it.
That's
because
right.
It's a loop component.
Yeah, because it's a loop component. This is, what Olay was, right? The idea that you could open a Excel spreadsheet inside of a Word document. When you clicked inside of it, the toolbar would change to be Excel toolbar. But the data was live, so that if the underlying file changed somewhere at some point, you would see that in the Word app as well, right? And so we're applying that same idea. Yeah, your example is great because in organizations now you have a mix of younger people who are really comfortable with Teams and older people who are not leaving Outlook until they're dead.
Yeah.
And this allows everyone to participate in the same collaboration.
You don't want to have to leave them out and you're emailing them copies of things.
Right.
And, get rid of that plague, that linked thing.
Yeah. Because Outlook will handle it in the background. You don't have to worry about it. He thinks he's sending you a copy of the document. He's not.
He's not. It's actually setting a reference to the SharePoint location.
So you still have that one master truth or whatever you want to call it. That one
I think it's really brilliant. And how is it different than Notion? It's that stuff.
It's that stuff. And that's why it's taken so long. We've been talking about Loop for at least 2 years. It might even be 3. It's hard to remember.
Well, and I think you have the problem of what is this? Like, are we replacing OneNote? Are we making Notion? Yeah, we're back to whatever. And then we're solving all these other problems too, and integrating through Teams. Like you also use Loop through Teams.
Yeah, and and that's interesting too because concurrent with this, I guess we have a new Teams that came out a couple of months. Well, actually, it's GA now. I've been using it for a while, like most people, but that's also GA today. New version of Outlook, which controversial in the commercial space because it doesn't have all the features yet. But both these things, I think, were all designed to be used together. That this is the point.
That's good. You want to talk about Clipchamp? Oh, no, Teams hitting over 300 million or 300.
Paul always wants to talk about Clipchamp.
I do want to talk about Clipchamp. Clipchamp's great. Have I mentioned Clipchamp?
It's really a Clipchamp kid.
I really am. I've never turned on an app so fast. Like I just it was so great from day one. But before we get to that, so like I said, the new Teams is GA. They announced a new number for Teams usage, which honestly, I kind of parsed their language as they said it in real time. It is still growing. One of them said, not as fast as before, right? So I think it was 300 million back in probably May. I'm assuming that was tied to build. And that was the last milestone. And now it's 320 million active, monthly active users. There is a Teams feature called Mesh. We're trying to pretend doesn't exist, but it's coming in January. This is that mixed reality. It looks a lot like Windows mixed reality, where you have these virtual rooms and the guys float around without legs and stuff. And
is that Horizon World from Facebook?
Yeah, it's very, very much like that. So that's arriving in January. You have to assume they wanted to have that shipped now, but whatever. Yeah. And you can mix and match, real people with the avatar people and have virtual environments. And it's supposed to be a little bit more natural. I think it makes it a lot more unnatural, but that's okay.
Now, you like the new Teams?
I do.
Have you gotten the dialogue pop up that said, do you like the new Teams? Do you want to go back?
Oh my God. That actually the only thing. So I had major problems with Microsoft Teams before the refresh, before the new version, and it kept resetting my audio and video settings, and it would just for some reason couldn't do all that stuff. It would pop up boxes in the middle of meetings and say, "Hey, did you know you could use Excel?" And it's like, guys, I'm in the meeting. Yeah. Why would you do this now? So the new Teams comes out. All those problems are solved, or they seem to be much better. And but the thing they pop up all the time is like, "Hey, we see you using the new Teams. Are you sure you want to use the new Teams? Would you like to go back to the old Teams?" No, I'm using the new Teams. Leave me alone.
I'm tempting you.
You go back.
It's so weird.
Do you think it's research? Like, let's make sure people want this? Or
I'm sure it was well intentioned. Because new things are bad for some people, and they were afraid that people couldn't get back. But if you were
But you've never clicked on it. You don't know if you'll actually get back or if it'll ask you more questions.
Well, the thing is,
too bad. You're never getting it.
Both apps are on your PC.
It's like funny if it laughed at you and said, no, sorry, buddy.
That's not happening.
Yeah, the Windows closed on that one. Yeah.
Let me load Slack for me.
Yeah, exactly. So the new Teams is a huge improvement. I spent the past 2-3 years complaining about Teams, and now the new ones, actually, it's great. So that to me is a big step forward.
It's weird. It's just becoming an app that you use, and it's not a big deal.
It's right. It's what it should have been from day one, right? Yeah. So that's good.
It takes a while.
Lighter weight, faster performance, et cetera, et cetera. So that's good. We should talk about the Windows 11 stuff, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's really, I wrote an editorial about this. I published it this morning. I wrote it over the past couple of days, but I was sort of reflecting on two major themes here. One is these eras of Microsoft, not errors, but eras of Microsoft, right? The Microsoft, the scrappy startup, the Microsoft that, dominated the world with Windows and Office, the Microsoft that kind of lost the script after the antitrust stuff, the Microsoft of the cloud computing era. And the Microsoft of the cloud computing era is the most successful version of Microsoft by far from a sort of a financial perspective or, market cap, however you want to measure that.
Mm-hmm.
It is by far also the least interesting Microsoft to me because it left Windows behind, right?
It's a cloud company.
Yeah, the push from Satya Nadella at the time was you need to make your business make sense, but it also has to make sense within this new Microsoft. And there are some businesses in Microsoft that lent themselves very naturally to this model, the server business transitioning into Azure and Entra and all those new purviews and all that stuff. And then Office transitioning to Microsoft 365, right? Though at Xbox even, although it hasn't happened, there's this kind of obvious future for those businesses. The future of Windows is not Windows 365, although that will be a thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is a thing. But as far as the volume usage of Windows, it's still very much a client, locally installed desktop operating system.
Right.
And it kind of got left in the dust. And I just, there was so much despair, over those, not quite 10 years, but let's call it 10 years. I guess it was about 10 years. So the nice thing is now we've entered this new era with Microsoft, right? I'll call it the AI era. And AI is the wave that lifts all boats, right? Windows gets to come along for the ride. And these are goofy little examples. And I don't mean to suggest that this is where AI stops when it comes to Windows. But if you think back just a few years ago, I would say 2016, 2017, we were in this hell of Microsoft would ship 2 updates, major updates to Windows every year. They were talking about creator updates, remember?
Yeah.
Everyone's a creator, which, by the way, is actually semi-true.
Yeah, reasonable.
But the features they put in Windows were ridiculous. Paint 3D and 3D view with all this silly things that were very kind of esoteric and niche usage and not broadly applicable to most of the audience. And of course, they quietly stopped working on that stuff eventually and actually took it out of Windows. But you look at the little things, because AI has happened so fast. You got to remember, internally, this started a year ago right now, right? With the email from Satya Nadella. The public face of it started in February, which is 9 months ago. There was a couple of major milestones in March with Microsoft 365, in May with all the announcements from Build, in September with all of the, I'll call them non-announcements or at least rebrandings and so forth. And now here we are at Ignite. That's a really short period of time for a company like Microsoft to not just announce everything they've announced, but to ship everything they've shipped.
Has made as many things as they've made.
Yes. So in the Windows space, these are minor things, but they're actually so much better than the junk we got in those creator updates. Things like background removal and paint, which sounds like a silly thing to even talk about. But I use Photoshop, and I got to tell you, it works better than Photoshop, and it's instantaneous. It's fantastic. And that is for someone who I don't spend a lot of time in this stuff. I do have some, art background or whatever. So I'm a little bit, I can sort of figure this stuff out a little bit. But for someone, most people don't and can't. And for something like that to work so well, it's just amazing. Photos has some stuff going on. There's text recognition functionality in the snipping tool.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I said, these are small things, but they actually benefit a far larger audience than
you think about the cumulative time saving and all of that.
Yeah,
because it's only a few things here and there, but everybody touches it.
Right.
So
and it's just it's going to get better from here, right?
Yeah.
So this is it's fascinating to me that Microsoft has already integrated Copilot into Windows. And yes, it's early and it doesn't do much on the Windows.
But it might be what saves Windows. Like we all still need an operating system, but which operating system was rapidly becoming irrelevant?
Yep.
What?
Now you have
Windows needs saving?
Well, yeah. Well, in the sense that, so look,
should
Windows
I call this Copilot Weekly? I mean, is this something I should be aware of?
Well, it's not going to be. But no, I mean, Windows, according to Microsoft, 1.4 billion users. A billion of them are on 10.
What a flop. Yeah.
Yeah, terrible. Well, no, but they're in different ways of measuring success. You got to remember, like a lot of the usage of Windows is just inertia, right? It's just people who have been, or I should say companies that have been on this platform and they rely on the whole Microsoft stack. And so, of course, they stick with that and they have a choice of hardware so they can buy hardware in bulk from PC makers like HP.
And they have a massive investment in the ecosystem that manages it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a trivial thing to switch.
Right. So again, I don't mean to suggest like if it wasn't for inertia, Windows would be useless. It's not like that. But there is this the thing that Windows doesn't have, and I've been talking about this for years, is this notion of engagement from users, right? From actual individuals. Today, all of our engagement as people is on little mobile, phones and mostly phones, right? And because that's where all the fun stuff is, right? And PCs are where you go for work, and that's not fun. So, engagement is low. We get in, we do our work, and we get out. I think this is the.
I'm sorry. I happily game on my 4K screen.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that's not absolute, but you are also the age you are, and so we kind of fall into that bucket.
Part of the PC master race. It's true.
Exactly. So, this is why I think AI is so cool for Microsoft and for people who care about Windows or use Windows or whatever. It's going to hopefully take us out of the terribleness of what happened. I'll call it 10 years again of either Microsoft broadly sort of ignoring Windows or worse, just acting malicious through Windows.
Well,
right.
Part of this is that Microsoft had been a Windows Center company for 30 years.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't.
Yeah.
And so Windows is just trying to figure out, what am I about?
And also,
they used to be the focus of everything, and now they're not.
I think there was also a very real and Wall Street driven desire to prove to the world that Windows wasn't that important anymore. That it was new stuff that was important.
Yes. And the fact, it was useful from a shareholder perspective to show that the company had pivoted.
That's right.
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 Become a new cloud company.
Yep.
At the same time, people still need operating systems.
I know. So all I'm saying is we'll see what really happens, but over a period of time, not just in the past few months, but I've already seen improvements to Windows that I think are meaningful and are much more meaningful than the stuff that they tried to do. Whatever that was.
So, the adjacent thought here would be, how is M365 Copilot on a Mac?
Right.
Because if these machine learning models are what's going to make Windows distinctive, the Office team cares about as many platforms as they can get their hands on. They're not about Windows.
Actually, this is part of the problem of the complexity of Microsoft 365, right? So there are native apps that run on Windows. Mm-hmm. There are native apps that run on the Mac.
Yeah.
They're different. They're on different schedules, different teams, et cetera. There's the web version, which I think should be the focus, frankly, of those apps. Those things should be made into PWAs, offline support, et cetera, et cetera.
So googly.
Well, it is 2023. I'm just saying, maybe it's time. And then there are the mobile apps, right? These are all different teams, different groups, different whatever. But Microsoft 365 has this overall desire to do the AI thing, and they're going to do it across those. But, we've been following Microsoft 365 since it was a thing. And the one thing I can tell you is that it's very complex trying to keep up with what they're doing with this product.
Yeah.
Because it's so big and it hits on so many different places. So you just talk about an app like Word, literally, there are 5 major native app versions of Word in the world.
Right.
5. So if they introduce a feature, whatever it is, like one of the big ones was that auto transcription of audio recordings, which is a fantastic feature in Word on the web, not in Windows, not on the Mac, not on mobile. This is the matrix of where features get applied is very complicated.
Yeah, that might be a cool graph to build out.
Yeah,
just to show that there's no complete version of any product.
Right. So depending on who you are, you probably have access to a native desktop version of some kind. You obviously have access to the web version, and you have access to one of the mobile versions, depending on which phone you use. So which one has which features, and it's complicated. And I think it's going to get more complicated with Copilot for Microsoft 365 because it's a lot of that stuff is very app specific. And then some of it is more broad. It works across the apps. And I think the primary interface has to be the web. I really do. I know.
Yeah.
I'm really looking, I mean, so I have some strong opinions all of a sudden on AI.
Yes. Okay. That's weird. All of a sudden?
All of a sudden. Well, I've
Okay.
come around a little bit. I think it's a mistake to do something general. And something general does have to be on the web. I think the real strength, I'm starting to think, and this is because I started playing with these new GPTs that OpenAI did, is creating expert systems. So I created a GPT that knows everything there's to know about Lisp. I gave it every book I have on Lisp, every website, and I can query it about Lisp. That's probably small enough. I'm actually downloading some tubby models right now.
It's a finite data set.
It's a finite data set. It's probably small enough to run locally, which is cheaper, faster, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Same. So, if you wanted to know everything there is to know about your car, you get the manuals, put them in an expert system, and query it locally. Those to me seem like, you don't have some hallucinations. In fact, you actually tell the GPT.
Right. They're going to be more reliable.
You say specifically to the GPT, do not give me any answer that doesn't come directly from the material I've given you. Don't make stuff up. So I think that there is, in some sense, something that you have locally that's an expert system that might be more useful to me.
I agree. I can't remember if we talked about this before we started recording or since, but this notion of small language models, and which are useful, obviously, on local devices, but also in the cloud for finite data sets, right? More efficient, more cost effective, et cetera, better performance.
You still have to do some training. Because these GPTs start with OpenAI, and I think that's what's telling you how to put a sentence together. There's some stuff that you need to do, but so I'm trying this. There's a open source project to run these locally, and you do have to download an LLM. Usually it's Lambda or something like that.
So I think if you extrapolate out what you just said, so you're talking about a very finite topic, Lisp.
It's an expert system. In the old school AI, that's what we call them.
Yeah, so that's
the 1970s.
Yeah, so that's one end of the spectrum. The other one is just the entire internet, and it's just what it is. It's a mess.
And oddly enough, it's weird. Because it's the internet.
So, but in between is, and probably right in the middle of those two, is this Copilot for Microsoft 365. Because you are working with a finite set of data. It's a lot of data. It could be in an enterprise, but it's all internal data of different types, right? This stuff comes out of databases, SharePoint / OneDrive, your calendar, Outlook system, and all that kind of stuff. Email, meetings, meeting transcriptions and notes, and who said what and who did what and who said what we're going to do. And you can work with that data set. It's going to be cloud-based, right? This is not a hybrid system per se, but it's for a cloud-based data set. It's manageable, I think. And I think that's obviously when Microsoft puts out Copilot for Microsoft 365 specifically to enterprises that can have 300 or more seats, they are
worried about something.
They're very specifically limiting it. Yes. And so they're going to learn, and we're going to learn how that works. But I think it's compelling. I think it's very interesting. Even the individual level, and this would be more hybrid, I would imagine, because we all have, our people in this world would have data in OneDrive as an individual. That could be photos, right? As well as just documents for work or whatever. They're going to have their email, right? Hopefully going through Outlook.com or whatever in Outlook, right? And so there's that. You are, as an individual, your own form of kind of data set aggregation across multiple sources, and to me it's even easier, if that's the right word, to kind of encapsulate all that for an individual, than it is for a business of any size. So I think this stuff is all going to happen. Microsoft's big. Really, I think the thing that drove the cloud explosion that we don't really talk about a lot is the hybrid stuff, right? Because you had,
that was just a discovery. It's like, listen, not everything belongs. There's no one solution for anything.
And you're coming hybrid from here and going to there.
Yeah,
we're not going 100%.
No, we never do.
Right. So that was a big that helped Microsoft a lot, because when you're a cloud first company like a Google or an Amazon, they don't have that. To offer those companies, and that's part of that inertia thing I was talking about. They stuck in
and now you see like Arc works perfectly well on your on-prem servers too. So the same instrumentation suite that's taking care of your cloud VMs, even in AWS, but then also on-prem. So they're really flattening that. Doesn't matter where you run your stuff, we can help you.
Yeah.
You want to talk about Clipchamp?
I do.
You do? Yeah,
I do. So unfortunately, there's not much to talk about from a features perspective. Well, there's a little bit. Microsoft had, again, probably back at Build in May, announced that Clipchamp would be coming to Microsoft 365 commercial customers. It is available today along with Microsoft Designer, which is their sort of, what's the low end Adobe, the free Adobe product, like a Canva or what do you call it? Adobe Express kind of a solution. But, again, integrated into the whole Microsoft ecosystem. It's pretty good. It's fine. But the reason this is exciting is because all these Microsoft 365 commercial users have associated OneDrive / SharePoint storage. As an individual, anyone can use Clipchamp. I should talk about that a little bit more. It's free and it's great, but one of the things you don't get for free is cloud storage, and they don't even integrate with OneDrive, which you think they would. Right. So they want you to buy that subscription for now. I hope that changes. But if you think about it, whatever assets you might have to put into a video should be stored in the cloud. It should be available on any computer. It's a web app. I should be able to go to any PC and open up the project and have it just work. But because you have to pay for that basically now, that it's hard to impossible. I found even if I have the exact same files in the same locations in the file system, it just doesn't work. There's something, it just doesn't, you have to kind of apply each asset. But in a business situation, in the enterprise, you will be using their storage for that stuff. Of course you will. There'll be collections of assets for you to use, with corporate logos and whatever. And that will always be available. So now they integrate on the back end with that stuff. And that's super smart. Again, I really need this to come to individuals because we all have, OneDrive if we're using Clipchamp. But in the commercial space now, that does work. So that's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you got the Clipchamp in. I really felt the urge, the need. Let's take a little pause that refreshes, and we'll return. Windows Weekly, coming to you from Microsoft Ignite in Seattle proper or Redmond?
Seattle proper.
Seattle proper.
We're at the convention center.
Nice. Paul Thurrott, Richard Campbell, and more in a moment. The show today brought to you by HID Global. Reduce risk, operating costs, and complexity by outsourcing public key infrastructure operations to HID Global's cloud-based PKI as a service model. It provides automated management of the complete certificate lifecycle and encryption. HID Global's your one-stop shop for simplifying private and public PKI management with one predictable price on one easy-to-use platform. And HID Global's simple subscription plan has no additional charges for additional certificates under your current plan. Geographically dispersed and scalable architecture across multiple regions, HID Global goes wherever AWS is. Ease your procurement pains. With HID Global, you'll get up and running in 2 weeks. That's a lot quicker than competitors. HID Global's assistance with deployment always includes their incomparable white glove service, expertise, and knowledge. Plus, you'll receive ownership of the private keys. For Google and Mac systems, HID's connector model of PKI uses open source certificate utilities so your organization can use multiple operating systems. That's great for BYOD. Visit hid.link/WW today. That's hid.link/WW. And thanks for your support, HID Global. Now back to the show. All right, we go back to Seattle, Washington. Is it raining?
No, but it's chilly.
It's cold.
Cool, crisp.
It's colder here than it is at home.
It's the humidity, right?
It's damp. Yeah, it's a damp.
It was 75 degrees every day in Mexico, and here it's 35.
You're spoiled. Sorry, but Richard, this is like Madeira Park, right? You probably could walk here.
Yeah. No, Mad Park's pretty
you
much
should do a little camera pan.
Yeah. Oh yeah, let's see it.
Play with the gizmo.
We're in a
here.
bubble.
You have the means. You have a PTZ. Oh, look.
Yeah. I think that's about and then jittery. Yeah, that's sort of the limits of how far it can go. So that's our door out.
I'm surprised they're not
the other booth.
There's no fans with their nose pressed to the glass or anything.
Yeah. No one knows we're here.
Yeah, I know. It's all very secret.
It's hard to explain, but This is a new convention center that's built basically the next block from the old one. Right, there's a bridge, but we're not using the old place. It's 5 stories tall, I think, including a basement or whatever. We are in the furthest, the toppest floor and the furthest corner of it.
They put us, which is, I mean, for making a podcast space is a good thing to do.
It's the food is between.
Oh, that's good. That's all the podcasters really care about. Where's the food?
Yeah.
We should, had I known, I mean, we didn't know. We thought you might even be doing this from a hotel. Had I known, we would have made a big banner that says, with arrows saying, right here, Paul and Richard, come here, right here.
Yeah. Well, it worked out. Hey, there's one last Ignite thing that was the top of the conversation. Actually.
That's right.
And that was the building their own hardware.
Yeah.
The Cobalt.
And Maya.
And then the Maya rack, which Rick Kluss dropped in on us and said, by the way, they had to build a special stage for that. So they had a double wide 42 or 50U rack unit that they call Maya.
Right.
On one side is all compute units, GPU.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then then on the other half is all cooling.
Right.
And so they're using copper plate liquid cooling. This just gigantic.
It looks like the radiator from an F-250 or 350 truck, or maybe like a hot tub.
It might be.
And then, but if you like, when you think about like a heat, what do you call this? Like a thing on a CPU, like a heat dispensing plate. It was like that, but it was the size of a Volkswagen.
Yeah. And apparently it would have gone straight through the normal stage.
Right.
The special stage to put it down on.
If you watch the keynote, the guy has to walk over like 20 feet to get to it. It's because it couldn't go on the stage. It was
in forced location.
Yeah.
But it speaks to, and it only makes sense. Like, why are they buying commercial hardware? I'm sure they're buying it at a discount.
Yeah.
But you now are starting to see specific optimizations. And Satya was big on, GPU workloads.
Well, we saw Google do this. We saw Facebook do this. Facebook actually has an open standard for servers.
Yeah. That I think a lot of people are using. Like it is, like popular way to go.
Yeah. So now Microsoft has its first ever cloud-based, Azure data center CPU in the form. I think that one's Maya, right? Cobalt, which is an ARM chipset.
Yeah.
Right. Very interesting. 64-bit, 128 cores. That chip is the size of a dinner plate. It's unbelievably big.
It was his whole hand. Yeah. Like it was a good size.
If you can palm a basketball, you might be able to hold it in one hand. It's
wow. How many transistors? So this is a comparison I have now. My new MacBook Pro with the M3 Max has 9 billion transistors. How many in this thing? If it's this big,
that's a good question.
And it's got an F-150 heat sink. I mean, it's
5 nanometer.
It's 5 nanometer. Wow.
5.
So who makes this? Is this chip? Not Microsoft, obviously.
Yeah, right.
They did not say.
They're not really saying.
Yeah. So I mean, it may be produced from TSMC, but the dichotomy was hilarious.
Yeah.
That at the same time they're talking about building their own chip, the very next conversation is with the CEO of NVIDIA.
I know. Yeah. So this is we'll try to tone down the language here, but it was So they introduced their AI accelerator chip. I don't know why they didn't call it an NPU, but whatever. Which is, I guess, was Maya, and then the CPU, and then they brought out they did AMD, they did
5 billion transistors,
5 billion transistors,
105 billion. Yeah, the largest chips in the 5 nanometer process on the Cobalt CPU.
Yeah, so in the sense that Apple is always trying to replace their partners with in-house products and services. Microsoft appears to be trying to do that as well, right? So I don't remember. I think it was the CPU, or I can't remember if it was the CPU or the GPU, but or the accelerator was 40% more efficient than whatever. It must have been the CPU because they were basing it on the ARM chips that they had been using previously, which is huge because this is the goal, right? To reduce the cost, improve the efficiency, and they're on that path. But then they brought out the CEO of NVIDIA for an extended period of time, by the way. And you just got the feeling like they're going to replace, unless NVIDIA shows up with a miracle.
Well, and that's the real question is, what's NVIDIA's next trick?
Right. Yeah, we were talking earlier, NVIDIA tripped their way into their current, they're the biggest chip maker in the world right now.
Yeah.
By market cap. But they're so successful because they were making GPUs for gaming PCs, which is a small business, relatively speaking.
Then crypto.
But then this stuff happened, right?
Yeah.
And this for some, I mean, just lucky roll of the dice.
Yeah.
These workloads work really well on their current generation hardware. If they don't keep that going, NVIDIA, I think we've talked about this a little bit before. I mean, they won't disappear, but imagine what Google would look like if they didn't have search/advertising.
Right.
That's what NVIDIA is going to look like if Microsoft and the rest of the world can figure out how to make more efficient, cost-effective AI accelerators, I guess we'll call them.
Yeah.
So,
and the other side of this, of course, is they have hundreds of data centers, racks and racks and racks of machines. Like, you're not going to replace that quickly.
Right.
So, I mean, we're still showing the CPU in your hand because that's how few there are.
Right.
Their one data center is going to start going Cobalt. They're going to start evaluating the workloads and look at the lifespan.
Yeah.
Does it kind of run at full bore for 5 years? Like, does it work the way it's supposed to?
And maybe there are certain workloads that do work better with that, or with NVIDIA, or with AMD, or whatever it might be.
But by the time you're really confident that it can take on a major chunk of the workload, you want to start replacing things, NVIDIA should have something different.
I hope so. Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Do you want to talk about greenwashing?
I have nothing to point to.
Right.
But every conversation about, and this is zero carbon, and this is recovered energy and so forth, I just feel like I always want to read the fine print, because every time I do, I'm disappointed.
Yeah. I mean, they turn this thing on and the city's lights dim. It's not like there's some magical reverse switch where they're pumping electricity back onto the grid.
No.
Like this stuff, it's expensive and it uses a lot of energy.
Yeah. But, our world runs on compute. So hopefully they're building out low emission energy for it. These data centers are getting big. You're going to start wanting your own power plants. And for better or worse, and I do a whole set of shows on this over on .NET Rocks with the Geek Out. It's like small modular nuclear, little 60 megawatters.
Right.
Boy, a pair of those would go a long way to run a data center.
Yeah. There's some issues there.
Yeah. You talk about what business are you in?
Yep.
Do you run your own power plant? I don't know the answer to that. It's really something. I got to do a shift to .NET Conf yesterday.
Yes,
so
I watched.
You saw me.
I liked it.
I was doing the MC gig, which is a pretty fun gig.
Yeah.
I got to introduce all of the
That's
guests.
neat.
Yeah. It was a good .NET Conf. .NET 8 is an important version of .NET.
Yeah. So why? I mean, what's the big deal?
I don't think there's a bunch of stuff that came together on that. It is
LTS.
Yeah. It is a long-term support one, but that's becoming less meaningful. Some companies are big on it's a 3-year version.
Actually,
rather
if you
than
don't,
a 2 version.
Quick diversion here.
Yeah.
Obviously, the old .NET, the .NET we know from back in the day, the 4.8. Yeah. The .NET framework or whatever, right? So this is a thing that still ships on Windows.
Yep, because Windows depends on it.
It's tied to the Windows support lifecycle. It's tied to Windows, right?
It also has a 10-year support.
because of when it was invented or implemented. Yep. So when 4.8 actually is a fairly recent release.
Yeah.
So it's going to be in Windows forever. But then there's this other.
Remember, the VB runtime is still in Windows.
Yes, that's right.
And it really hasn't had anything happen to it since 99.
Yep.
Like it is forever.
Yeah, it sure is. So the new .NET, maybe not obviously, but it is cross-platform and open source.
And an annual release cadence.
And what was it? Between the 3.x and 5 version, it became .NET.
Yeah. When they went to 5, they said
it's .NET. Right. So this is the new .NET. So this is something that's revved annually. It's on a very predictable very predictable development schedule.
November 13th.
The life cycle is 18 months or 3 years, depending on every other year.
Well, it's really 2 versions or 5 versions. Right?
There you go. So how do you explain it? What's your elevator pitch for .NET? What is this?
I mean, it's why this LTS, like that whole effect is really, the point is to stay up, right? Is to use the new versions. And, one of the big things has always been performance improvements. That you can take your existing .NET 7 app,
just
recompile it with .NET 8, and not only does it just work, it's faster.
Right. And if nothing else changed, that's still a huge benefit.
And then the question is, are you using the new features like this, the new language constructs in C# 12? Yep. A bunch of the new capabilities in
It's also cool things. You can compile to native code if you want to, and just you don't need to have the support libraries or anything.
No, once upon a time, we did the whole DLL approach to save memory. Remember, we needed to save memory and disk space.
Right.
If we don't need to do those things, now it's more about reliability. Copilot is a complete executable with everything.
Standalone exe.
Yeah, and it'll run. And you just don't care about versions of anything at that point.
Right. Yeah. So, but .NET in general, but .NET 8 specifically encompasses so many different, I don't know, software platforms, I guess we'll call them. Obviously, .NET MAUI.
Yeah, all the different
ASP.NET,
stacks.
Blazor.
The new version of Blazor.
Yep.
And so one of the things that made 8 important was this is kind of the third version of MAUI. And it's kind of the third version of Blazor at the same time. And Microsoft has a knack for the third versions are
It is
strong.
real. I mean, this is real. This is not a one-off. We still talk about it. This actually still happens.
It still happens. And it makes sense. You get the first bits out there. And what you didn't get done shows up in the second version. And then you've gotten enough feedback, enough utilization that the third one is the one where you really have customers feedback into.
There's also a neat thing. Part of the show I watched when you were emceeing was with David and Maddie talking about .NET MAUI and this notion that, because of the new way that software is developed, you don't really you go in with some goals for this version, but you can actually accomplish more. It's created in the open. They're taking pull requests from users on the outside of Microsoft, and a bunch of them get integrated into the product. And so when version 8 actually comes out, they actually delivered more than they had promised. Right? Yeah,
because of the community itself.
Yeah, which is really
fascinating. Right?
Yeah,
that's the place that we're at now. So I mean, it was a good time was had by all. It's frustrating that they're the same week.
Yeah. So to be clear, right? So we have Microsoft Ignite here in Seattle.
Yes,
and then .NET Conf has been a virtual event, I guess.
Always been a virtual event.
And how many years has that been going?
Since .NET Core. So 2017, 2016.
Yep.
And so, but it's always been a virtual event out of the studios. What used to be called the Channel 9 Studios. Before that, the MSNBC Net. Now it's called DevRel Studios.
Okay. I still have a picture of I don't know what to call it. It's not an office, but it looked like the control area of the Death Star in Star Wars. And it looked like this is where Big Brother controls the world from.
The joke is in Star Wars, that control panel. That
exactly.
Laser. That is an audio control panel.
Oh no, really? I didn't know that. That's hysterical.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
Yeah, they repurpose. Of course it is.
They didn't make anything. No, they just took an actual one. This looks right. Got square blinky lights. Let's go.
That's very funny.
Yeah, so that was back when MSNBC was the ongoing concern. This dates back.
And they still had the double lock set. Right, because it was a sort of business with a business kind of thing, and it's still there. It's a nuisance to go to those.
Is it in New Jersey? Where is it?
No, it's in the campus in Redmond.
It's building 25
in Redmond. Oh, okay.
Huh. Yeah, it's opposite of 25.
I have a lot of memories from that building. Anyway, so it was you went over and emceed part of that show.
Yeah, I got a 4-hour shift.
And they do 3 days? It's live, mostly live.
The first day is sort of your traditional single track keynotes, presentations from the product teams, that sort of thing. And then there's an online party at the end of the day,
right? And
then the second day, they go to a 24-hour around the world. So there are presenters literally all around the world that get involved, so that it becomes this huge community event over the last 2 days.
Like Ignite, if you don't get to watch any of that live, it's no problem. It's all going to be there.
Everything's recorded
up on YouTube or whatever.
Yeah, but there are folks who stay up all night to watch this stuff. Right, like to just see their friends too, like all of these MVPs and things. Like everybody submits to be a part of .NET Conf and to show off what you've done with the product.
It has a kind of a homespun quality to it that I really like. It is the polar opposite in some ways of this big orchestrated events.
Yes, with our hanging light things.
Yeah, exactly.
So like it is much more homegrown.
I like it. I like it.
You mean like Twit? Yeah, that's the way to go. I love that. Yeah, just kind of folksy down home.
Yeah,
sitting around the Cracker Barrel, chewing the fat.
I'm not a big city developer, but if I was, it's nice.
Fun.
Yeah.
It sounds like more fun, frankly.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's more personable for sure.
Yeah.
So Scott Hanselman was on there, David Orton.
Scott, love him.
Yeah,
and Scott Hunter and Paul Yuck wrapped up.
I saw that.
Performances, and
Scott Hunter came down from his cloud of prominence and.
Well, and the other big piece was David Fowler, who's now a distinguished engineer, and I always refer to him now as distinguished engineer David Fowler.
Nice.
Who is leading the Aspire project.
Okay.
So that was one of
So we
the
should
big
talk about that.
statements.
Aspire, not Inspire.
Not Inspire, Aspire.
Aspire.
And actually, if you think about it, it's a pretty darn good name in the sense of it's making real cloud software.
Yeah.
Right. Like this is about a tool suite and a working environment for software that's going to be natively cloud. So meaning it's going to be elastic in scale. It's going to
it's agnostic. It should be able to run anywhere.
Platform agnostic. Right. And so really, David's been leading the initiative to put all the pieces together. Like all of this was out there. You could do it. It was just hard.
Yeah.
And so now to say, hey, let's make it a little.
Well, you want to use a tool and have just wind up all the pieces you need and just plug in your.
The old line is like, I want to fall in the pit of success, right? And so like the making mistakes is harder in the tool.
Yeah,
it tends to lead you to the right things to do for providing that scalability, manageability, instrumentation, and diagnostics.
I meant to look this up, and I just ran out of time. We've been kind of busy today, but sometime this past summer, Microsoft kind of came out with sort of a formal proposal for this thing, and the idea was that we're going to kind of formalize what a web app means,
right?
Like a cloud, I should say, a cloud app. Excuse me. And, at the basis, there'll be some number of cloud services or cloud infrastructure. It's agnostic. You can plug in, you could just be on S3 or AWS or whatever. You could have whatever data sources you want. But there's going to be this kind of a standard. And the Aspire, as I understand it, is almost like the .NET 8 implementation
of this CNCF, or the cloud native standards for how you want to build.
And it was kind of a surprise too, right? They did telegraph this.
They held on to it pretty well.
Yeah,
and it seems to be well received. But it's an aspirational goal to build software that runs well in the cloud.
That's the name.
That's the way I think of it.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I'm delighted to see that new project like that. And it's exactly that problem. It's like, hey, just give me a starting point,
right? So
that when I start building my app the way I know how to build it, I'm not crippling myself for doing more in the cloud.
The part of .NET that I care about the most now, I guess, is .NET MAUI.
Yeah.
And part of it involves that 7 stages of grief over the death of the native Windows app. That this isn't a thing anymore.
Yeah. I mean,
but
it exists. But WinForms is still there.
It is, but that exists? Is it in a coma somewhere? I mean, it's I know it's technically it's active,
and hundreds of thousands of apps still using it. It's still being.
But if you're looking for a modern framework, a modern environment, whatever it might be, to build a native Windows app, MAUI is sort of it. It's kind of interesting because it's WinUI 3 on Windows, but it's also cross-platform. And the stages of grief thing is based on the fact that back in the day, there would be these formal standards for title bars and window buttons and how controls work. The
MDI standard.
Yeah. And it's a little looser today, but there's also these kind of this notion of what I'll call, for lack of a better term, modern app and modern app kind of design templates or whatever, designs, whatever. Again, a little looser, but these are the apps. If you open up, say, Notepad is an interesting example because it's a modern UI on top of old code. But if you go into settings, the settings is not a dialogue. It's part of the app. You do your thing, you get out. It's just a design pattern. It's just a different style. And MAUI supports all that stuff. So because it's cross-platform, you could, like Flutter might be, or like web app can be. You're going to write an app. You're not going to write a Windows app, really, right? You're writing an app that runs on iOS and Android,
right?
And Mac through Catalyst and Windows.
Yeah.
And what they've been doing over the past 3 versions is putting more and more desktop specific functionality in there.
Because they started with Xamarin Forms, so they had iOS and Android sort of nailed. Although there was plenty to fix in Xamarin Forms still.
For sure.
But
they did. It's a simpler project.
Getting better.
Yeah.
But landing it on desktop, it's the same problem that Flutter has.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. But the thing that's interesting is it really benefits the whole world because you have an iOS app, we'll call it, it could run on the iPad, and you want it to look different. You want it to, fill the screen and look different. People could have a touchpad and a keyboard. You want to have keyboard shortcuts. You want to have mouse pointer interaction. And so you could build this app that scales between these different devices and different screen sizes and all that stuff. And it's gotten better. And so it's never going to be that thing I sort of always wanted from the beginning, which was just Windows, because that doesn't make sense.
Right.
And also just Windows, sort of classic Windows. These are more, like I said, more modern design patterns. I'm not even sure what to call it. I'm sorry, but and a lot of old school people like us, we sort of see this thing and we're like, oh, come on, really? But it's like, actually, this is the world, and it's the one I always keep my eye on. It's very, very interested in .MOE, and I like watching it mature.
Yeah, no, and it's like I said, it's a great time. Like everybody's very excited. The new version has done well, and it'll be good to see the adoption rate going.
Yeah, right.
But this is not a dev show.
No, it is not.
There must be some overlap. I mean, they wouldn't put it right next to Ignite. What do you think the overlap is between the .NET Conf and the Ignite?
So
Conf?
honestly, it should have been at a different time or integrated into Ignite. And Richard probably knows more about the politics side of that. But
yeah,
I'm not sure how much we can say. But
okay,
well, I mean, a lot happened all at once. It's hard to find a location for Ignite, and .NET Conf isn't flexible because they ship to a date, right? So there was these things. Yeah. So they really didn't have much overlap. There is some dev content here at the show, not a lot, but some. It's mostly
we didn't
cloud, right?
Yeah, we didn't talk about a lot. Is there some low code stuff going on in the Microsoft 365 space with regards to making your own copilots, right? And integrating data sources, kind of pulling them in, and you're basically doing a Power App kind of a construction of what is basically a copilot. There's we talked about Windows AI. Oh, actually, did we? We might have skipped over this.
The Windows.
Did we talk about the Windows dev stuff? I don't think we did. I think we did not. So let's just do that really quickly because we're kind of the dev part of it. So Microsoft announced something called Windows AI Studio, which is built on, so we get this right, Azure AI Studio. Right.
Because we need more studios.
Because we need more studios. Copilot was the number one term we used today, but Studio I think was number 2.
It's up there. Yeah.
This is not a new product. It's not a new app. It's what Microsoft would probably call an experience that runs inside of Visual Studio Code, like so much does these days. And it is a way for Azure AI Studio is a way to work with AI models in the cloud.
Right.
Windows AI Studio today is a way to work with AI models locally on device, but the long-term vision for it, which they've been very explicit about, is to combine these two things and do hybrid when necessary. Right. So you in other words, you can create an AI-based app with this thing. By the way, probably in Maui, that would be one way if you were going to run it locally on devices. And in the future, you'll be able to integrate with cloud-hosted AI. You use what makes sense based on what it is you're doing. So kind of a hybrid model.
Yeah.
It's early days with that, right? There was an update to DevHome. DevHome is something that shipped technically in Windows 11 version 23H2. It's in preview, right? So I think the version there is probably 0.6. They're up to 0.7 now. And that adds, I actually forget what that adds. So much information here. A little bit of overload. It's a minor update to DevHome. I apologize. I can't remember. But they also added some functionality to WSL for, the Windows subsystem for Linux for enterprises. Because one of the issues there is that this thing kind of sits there unencumbered by all of your organizational policies and whatnot. And so now they can secure that at an organizational level and manage it with Intune. So now they have basically answered the enterprise concern with this product by making it fully manageable and controllable with policy. So this is now something, WSL is a way for developers mostly to do both Linux and Windows-based development on the same box, essentially. Right. So there's some interesting stuff there. That, by the way, that also speaks to the importance of, Windows again, because they want Windows to be the best place for developers. And it's a little goofy, honestly. They put they bake developer features into 23H2, whether you want them or not. So my wife, my mother will all get DevHome on their computers. And that's interesting. Right?
Everybody's a coder. The hour of code's coming up. She could sit down, do an hour.
Actually, Leo, I don't know. Maybe you're not paying attention, but AI is killing coding. So I don't know.
Oh,
why would you need
nuts anymore? Oh my God!
Yeah, remember all those guys in Appalachia that were going to get out of coal and learn how to code? Yeah, they're
too late. Blew it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's gonna. but there might be some truth to that. I mean,
Look, there's so many stock phrases we have now about AI, and one of them is that there should be a human sitting between whatever AI creates,
I agree.
right?
Yeah.
And there's no place that's more true.
AI is your pal. It's not the leader. It's the follower.
Your Copilot.
It's your
And sometimes
what a good name.
Sometimes the Copilot wants you to crash the plane. You got to be careful.
Yeah.
You can't always trust the Copilot.
Not always.
That's not really there.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
All right.
I think it's going to be more true of
So I got a big
development.
update to 23H2 like last night.
Hold on. Hold that thought. We're going to talk about Windows. The other thing Microsoft does, you might have heard of it.
Yep.
Yep.
Still
there. You mentioned this earlier, Richard, but it's really true. It was the Windows era. And for a while, I think, wasn't it the Office era? Like they made more money in Office than they did in Windows?
I kind of combine those together. It's like Windows.
Yeah, it's all the same.
Windows and Office was the foundation of that.
And now
Server
it's
got in there.
Now it's Azure.
They expanded from small work groups.
Azure for sure is the engine.
I think it still is, but I would say that yes, but to me the era has shifted from cloud, although obviously a huge component of it, to AI, right?
Yeah.
I think we're witnessing right now.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was
very
wondering.
specific.
Yeah. I
think so. That's how
the next big thing. Or maybe but it is since it's so tied to Azure. But that's why I'm thinking these expert systems running locally may be very interesting.
I actually just wrote about this. It's very interesting. You look very high level. You kind of can make the case, I have made the case that every era at Microsoft is kind of based on the foundation of what came before. The Windows dominance of the 90s was based on the MS-DOS dominance of the 80s, right?
Right.
The Office built on top of that, of course. And then the cloud is based on that transition that this business case study we'll be talking about for ages. They made that transition to the cloud and roared to more success than ever. So it's all, everything is kind of based on the past. So this is no different. AI relies on and couldn't happen without what had happened before with cloud.
Yeah. I like it. All right. Well, we're going to go back to the old timer Windows in just a second, but
yeah, we sure are.
But first, a word from our sponsors. Windows Weekly continues. I always like to talk about our Thinkst Canary. It's a little honeypot that's easy to configure. You could do in 3 minutes of setup. It can look like anything from a Windows server with all the services on to some select services on a Linux server to a network-attached storage, even to a SCADA device. It could be a bunch of different kinds of things. Now, the point of it is it's a perfect impersonation. That's why it's a honeypot. We have a fake Synology NAS right here in my Thinkst Canary, and it's got the MAC address. It's got the DSM login. It looks exactly like the real deal. The difference is the minute a bad guy attacks it, just even tries to log into it, thinking it's real, I'm going to get an alert. And that's what's cool about the Thinkst Canary. Just the alerts that matter. If you listen to Security Now or any of our shows, the breaches are a real problem. Target, Belgacom, the NSA, all compromised in months, or 4 months rather, sometimes even years. I think the Marriott one, they were there for 3 years before anybody found out. These companies spent millions of dollars on security products and services, but when it mattered, they had no idea there were bad guys in the network. Canary makes not only a hardware device, there's a VM version, there's a cloud version, and they also do Canary tokens. Any device can. In fact, we've created a bunch of Canary tokens with our Thinkst Canary. These are little tripwires, unlimited number. You can drop in hundreds of places around your network. There's no wrong way to deploy a Canary, by the way. The Canary personalities are designed so that a default configuration will catch attackers, but you can also customize. It's actually kind of fun and easy. Thinkst, the company behind Canary, has been in the security game for 2 decades. They've trained countless companies, militaries, and governments how to break into networks, and they use that experience kind of in reverse to build the Canary. It keeps attackers out. Very cool. These Canary tokens can look like PDFs or Word files. You can sprinkle them around. We've got an XLS file, a spreadsheet file that says payroll information. An attacker cannot resist trying to open that. But the minute they do, we will know. Simplicity is a priority with these Canaries. They do all the work necessary in the background to make them look convincing. And it's so easy. It's as easy as plugging in a kitchen appliance. You can get them in a variety of ways. They even have EC2 incidences or GCP machines. Canaries are designed to be deployed on internal networks where false positives are typically removed by whitelisting trusted systems that perform those scans. So you don't see, Johnny's doing an Nmap scan as he does every 3 months. No, you don't see that because you whitelist that. You just see the alerts that matter. Once deployed, our canary just sits there quietly. But if it ever puts out a peep, I know it's the real deal. Updates to the management console, individual canaries are automatic. They push those out over the air. They're also, of course, completely warranted for the life of your canary, so you can get them replaced or updated. Canaries are deployed and loved on all 7 continents. In fact, you can see that if you go to their website, canary.tools, canary.tools/love. All the love, all the loving tweets, all the emails from customers. And if you go to canary.tools/twit, you can get your canaries. Now, the number of canaries you're going to want depends on the size of your network. A big bank might have hundreds, a casino operation, thousands. We only have a handful. For that handful, let's just give you as an example, 5 canaries. $7,500 a year. You get your own hosted console. You get upgrades. You get support. You get maintenance. You can even get the price lowered if you use the offer code TWIT in the How'd You Hear About Us box. That's 10% off. And not just for that first year of canaries. That's forever. As long as you're using them. Here's the best part. If you're at all, concerned or doubting, you can get these canaries for 2 months and get a money-back guarantee. You have a 2-month money-back guarantee, full refund, every penny back. So 60 days to try before you're committed. And I have to tell you, in the many, many years we've been doing ads for this, no one has ever asked for that refund. That's what they tell us. No, because people, when they get the canary, they realize this is important. I need this. It's got to be part of your layered security strategy. The Thingst Canary, 10% off when you use the offer code TWIT in the How Did You Hear About Us box, the website, canary.tools/twit. You owe it to yourself to get this thing, canary.tools/twit. And we thank Thingst. We love these guys. Arun and his team are fantastic for supporting our shows for so long. Now let's go back to Seattle. What do you say? And Paul and Rich. Paul Thurrott, Richard Campbell are in Seattle for Microsoft Ignite. A bit more of a journey for Paul than it was for Richard.
I just drove down, but now I'm up the coast. I had to take the ferry too.
I somehow managed to turn a 2,500-mile trip into a 14-hour slog.
Oh God, that's because flying. Ay.
Well, where I live now, there's a lot of advantages to it, but one of the problems is it takes us 90 minutes to get to a real airport, like
that's
Newark,
not good. Yeah,
Philadelphia.
Then you're in Newark.
Yeah, right.
You flew out of Macungie Airport. I saw the pictures.
I flew out of the Allentown, the ABE, Allentown Bethlehem Emmaus is what that's. Or sorry,
ABE.
It is the ABE. It's the Lehigh Valley International Airport because there's one flight in Canada, and it's smaller than my driveway, but it's a fun little airport. And I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm flying out at ABE because I could get there in 20 minutes. Right, it's beautiful.
Right, and parking's cheap, I'm sure.
Oh, I didn't have my wife.
Right,
so
it's close,
but that meant I had to fly to Chicago, which meant I had a 5-hour layover, and I really like airport lounges. It was fine, but it was a long day.
I learned that lesson, in fact, on my last flight, because I flew, instead of flying to Boston and renting a car and driving to Providence, I flew to Baltimore and then to Providence, and that was a big mistake.
That's.
I
like TF-Green.
Yeah, I've flown to TF.
Well, it's like ABE. It's a cute little regional.
It's a lot bigger than ABE.
Yeah, is it?
Actually.
Okay. All right.
Oh yeah,
but it's not a big airport.
No, and it was, and the layover in Baltimore was just like yours, Paul. It was hours. It only takes an hour to get to Providence from
Boston. You can
Boston.
get in a lounge. It's okay.
Yeah, you were just going to plow email anyway.
Yeah, because the food in lounges is so good.
Yeah, actually, it is good compared to the.
Well, you got good lounges.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just fun.
All right, Richard really wants to talk about Windows, so I guess we better humor him.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I just remembered this. I just saw this update coming. I'm like, I'm on the road. Am I accepting this? All right, I'm accepting this. I mean, how bad?
It actually was pretty quick, right?
It was
pretty quick.
Yeah.
So I don't want to beat this to death. I've ranted and ranted about this 23H2, not 23H2 thing over multiple shows because by my count, I think this is the fourth time they've released 23H2. There was the initial preview release of what they were calling at the time the fall update that came in late September. And then Patch Tuesday happened in October, and they released a second preview version of the same exact thing, except this time all the features were turned on. They released 23H2, but by the way, still a preview, didn't advertise that on October 31st. And now Patch Tuesday's come around again. Guess what? They finally released it. So what's interesting to me is when I was talking about I got to update the book, I want to have something out the day this is available.
Right.
I was timing it for exactly right now.
Yeah.
This was my target date. And so when they announced the October 31 thing, I was like, what are you doing to me? Like, that's like 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks. Or it's 2 weeks. And I honestly, it worked out okay. But that release, as I said, of whatever that week was, probably early November, whatever the November 2nd show, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 weeks ago, I guess. Whatever it was actually a preview release. It wasn't even, this is like, the language is so screwed up. So actually yesterday, which was Patch Tuesday, November,
right,
was in fact the official non-preview, general available.
But it seemed like a patch.
Yes,
because I'd already
because
put on 23H2.
so because the features, you've already gotten them all, right?
All right.
They weren't always enabled depending on which updates you've installed.
Right.
So this is that enablement package.
This is a light up.
It just flips the switch. So it's
That's
a really quick
really
update. Yeah.
Why did they do this? Were they having problems?
Yeah. I don't want to pretend.
I just wonder if they were just having problems with features, so they were keeping some of them off, getting more of them out there, see how they behave.
Yeah.
It was a telemetry thing.
It's not worth me even trying to use my brain to figure out exactly what happened. But the initial release was CFRs, that first preview release in late September. So random. The October one was it was a preview release. So you still had to go get it. But if you did, supposedly you got everything.
Right.
Same thing with the October 31st release. It was a preview release, but it would enable everything right away. And now it's a non-preview release, and it will enable everything right away. So if you are using Windows 11, my apologies, but you, as we speak, or maybe by next week, everyone should have, right? I think this is the release. It's crazy how long it took. Here we are.
Awesome. Okay.
There you go. 150 new features. We've been beating it to death for 2 months. But
slowly.
Yeah. All right. So that's out. I also ranted about OneDrive over the past 2 months because I had so many problems. I'm still working on my photo digital decluttering projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the folder.
I thought you were finished.
Yeah, that's cute. I thought so too. I was so naive.
Finding more
Remember
stuff.
when I was young 2 months ago?
Yeah.
So OneDrive continues to have, not OneDrive, I'm sorry, File Explorer continues to have huge performance problems and reliability problems, especially when you're working with several hundred or several thousand files like I am,
right?
Locally on disk, by the way, not across the network. It's just sitting around the disk. It's a horrific problem. But tied to this, of course, is the OneDrive stuff. So one thing people are, like I talked about last week, I think are waking up to is, oh my God, like OneDrive's really being aggressive now about making you use it. And it's tied to this Copilot thing. They want to have that data back in. They want to make sure everyone's doing this.
Right.
One of the little bits of bad behavior that I mentioned in the book and I mentioned on Windows Weekly 2-3 weeks ago was all the crazy stuff it does when you try to leave OneDrive. Like it really wants you back. It's like when you try to switch from Edge. It's like, oh, come on.
You know you love us.
Love it. Yeah, exactly. So they were doing that with OneDrive. And they would literally they wouldn't let you close it. I mean, you could probably force quit it, but unless you filled out a little survey that explained why you were leaving. Yes. So that one apparently is what put people over the edge enough that Microsoft actually rolled that one back. They've taken away that. But I'm telling you, of the problems of OneDrive in 23H2, I would put that pretty far down on the list because there's some really bad behavior still occurring there. But they did. This is Microsoft responding to feedback, so they did do that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
So Patch Tuesday again was yesterday, right?
Yesterday.
So it was the 20th anniversary this month of Patch Tuesday. So John Cable is a guy from Microsoft who has the unfortunate role or job of explaining updates because, and I say it that way because, honestly, they're not explainable, right? Like it's a world of insanity. but he has to come as the voice of reason and explain why this all makes sense. And this is what we're doing. And his blog posts are always very interesting. I always pay a lot of attention to them. So I was interested to see that he wrote a blog post about the 20th anniversary of Patch Tuesday. I thought to myself, here we go.
Yeah.
And I have never read anything so horrible in my life.
How is it horrible?
So think about some of the milestones you could talk about with Patch Tuesday. For example, the day it actually started, the actual date, not in the blog post, or specific releases of things that occurred on specific dates. For example, in this blog post, we learned that Windows Server Update Services, WSS, and the Microsoft Baseline Security Analyzer both appeared sometime between 2008 and 2012. I don't know for sure. It was in there. Windows 10, for example, that arrived between 2013 and 2017. That's true. It's true.
Yes.
It was a specific date in July in 2015, but why you are from Microsoft, you couldn't get the exact date.
So it isn't 20 years, is it?
It's 18
years.
Probably 18. Yeah, exactly. It's 20 years-ish. I mean, I don't know why. The thing that bugs me about this, other than the obvious, and I know this is a semi-OCD thing or whatever, but the job here is to be precise. Yeah. I don't mean in the telling of the history. I just mean you're doing Windows updates. You should know exactly what's happening.
It's people's operating systems.
So now you're describing a history where it literally is specific dates, and there is not. You can read the post yourself. There's not a specific date.
Obvious specific dates.
Yes,
right?
it's nowhere. It's so weird. I just found that to be.
Did they miss an edit pass?
I don't know. Yeah, vaguely disrespectful. I don't know.
Oh, some intern wrote it probably.
Yeah, that could be. But still, again,
when you said intern, did you mean ChatGPT?
Maybe ChatGPT. Did you?
Yeah.
Hello, Dave. Did you know that it's sort of the 20th anniversary?
It is sort of the 20th anniversary. How should we talk about it? Vaguely. You know what?
Specific, we don't have specific dates.
We don't have. We can't. That's the problem with AI. It's not very good at specifics. Can't do math.
Yeah. Just don't have specific dates.
No, anyway. Okay, so 20 years of Patch Tuesday. It's been a wild ride.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And by the way, if I'm not mistaken, Patch Tuesday came out of the Trustworthy Computing Initiative.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
And just that we're patches quickly. We'll get it out to you as fast as possible, and really facilitated by the internet.
Yes.
This is all the transformation.
Yeah. We used to wait for service packs and
it came on a DVD,
update rollups and all that kind of stuff. Yep. Yeah. So Patch Tuesday, hooray. So I guess next, we can expect unexpected new features as soon as next Patch Tuesday, right? This is based on last year's.
So what's next? Is it going to be 24H1 now?
24. Please no.
It is November.
Moment 5. They'll call it Moment 6 just to screw with this. I don't know. I don't.
No Moment 9s, please.
Yep. The lost among the many announcements. The new Outlook is in Windows now. It's part of 23H2.
Okay.
It's at some point next year. It's actually just going to replace Mail and Calendar in the OS. It's not going to. They're not going to install it.
I think it is for that. I don't know why I had so many apps.
Yeah, I mean,
except they used to want to charge for Outlook.
I mean, Mail and Calendar and People, which kind of exists, kind of doesn't in Windows 11, date back to Windows 8, right? These were this was the Windows Live team, literally at the time, developing their HTML-based apps, that would run in Windows. They've always been really out of date. They've always been feature light. They work okay for what they are, but I think the new OneDrive in that space is actually, the new Outlook in that space is actually quite good. In the commercial space, we have a slightly different problem. So they are sometime, I bet it won't happen next year, but sometime will be allegedly, this is going to hit a wall, just like replacing Windows 10 is going to hit a wall. Try to replace the classic Outlook desktop app with the new Outlook. I know. So
yeah, I mean, I'd do it if it was good. I'm frustrated. I'm a classic Outlook user, have been for a long time, and every time I go over there,
it doesn't work.
I just, you know what I can't do?
Everything.
Work on my email.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and I wonder how much of just being an old guy with a known workflow, and it's just like I'm stuck in my work.
There's a lot of Outlook add-ons that people rely on that just don't work in this new version.
Yes.
It's a new model.
Then again, those add-ons cause problems in Outlook too.
Yep. No, I appreciate them wanting to modernize it.
Yeah.
I think it will eventually get to where Teams got to with the new Teams. But
Yeah, I hope so.
if you're waiting for that to happen or worried about how this is going to happen, Microsoft has published a roadmap for how they intend and when they intend to add features. And some of it is very interesting. It's there's like little features like auto capitalization, like seriously. But Copilot integration, dictation, lots of EML file support. I think POP3 account support, PST. How do you release a product called Outlook that doesn't support PST files?
But it's on the roadmap.
It's on the roadmap. So
This roadmap just a real. By the way, this doesn't work. Like, it's just a sideways way of admitting what doesn't work.
it's exactly. And I think we talked about this, but Copilot was rushed into Windows.
Yeah.
The new Teams, well, actually that one happened to be right in the right place. So that one kind of came along. And the new Outlook too, kind of forced in there because again, these things are all tied together in the back end and are part of this AI push that Microsoft is making. So there are a lot of versions, unfortunately, at Microsoft these days of products that were kind of put out. It's like, it's available and the real version's coming out in 3 months or 6 months
because updates on the internet.
Yep. Yeah, it's a new way. What else? Microsoft Store. I actually, I've written a book about Windows. I don't know if I ever talked about this. This feature was already in Windows. I'm kind of confused to hear it's new, but the Microsoft Store now lets you decide where to install games. I assume what that means is the literal place you install them, not the drive.
Right.
So it's probably a little more granular because previously in Windows 11 and 10, I should say, you could, if you had 2 disks or 2 partitions, you could say I wanted it on the D drive, not the C drive. You could already do that. So this must be a way to get it out of that hidden folder structure if you want to have it be in a place that you know and understand. Because actually, if you do run games out of the store, Xbox games, whatever, and you run one of those tools that look at your like WinDareStat or whatever, and you'll have this giant orange box over there. You're like, what the hell is that? It's like, oh, I installed Halo, and it's like you can't see it in the file system unless you know where to look because it's all hidden. But it's like the biggest thing. It's bigger than Windows. It's bigger, it's so I'm sure it's tied to that kind of thing. So that's fine. And then because we can't have too many co-pilots,
We need to keep a name list. How many different co-pilots get surfaced?
we should have whiskey right here. And every time we say co-pilot, we should be taking a shot. And then we just be.
That's what I've been doing all the time.
Yeah,
It would be in a state.
it would just be us asleep. I'm drilling on his shoulder or something. So Microsoft announced this probably at Build again, but now is generally available in time for the holidays. Copilot in Microsoft Shopping. This sounds silly, but honestly, it works pretty well. I was testing it. You can run it in any browser, but if you run it in Edge, you also take advantage. It's kind of a double whammy thing because Edge has shopping features built in, does price matching and looks for the best deal, et cetera, et cetera. So you could kind of combine the two if you wanted to in Edge. But what you basically do is you type in a prompt. You say something like, I'm looking for the cheapest iPad I can get or whatever. And it's a conversation like any other kind of chat-based AI service. And it will ask you follow-up questions. It will provide you with some results and then kind of prompt you for further questions. You can just keep talking to it, say, okay, I'm interested in this particular model or whatever it might be. So I actually did use it to shop for an iPad. I don't need an iPad. I just wanted to see how it worked. Actually, it's pretty good. I was surprised.
Yeah.
Not horrible. And they've also enabled that thing they were talking about, probably also back in Build, in Bing/Edge, which is AI review summaries, right? And so, in other words, you search for a product, you might want to buy it for someone for the holidays, whatever. And it will summarize the reviews like you see on Google Maps, right? If you look at a restaurant or whatever, it kind of gives you these little summaries. What are people saying about this product?
Right. I always worry about the quality of that data, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, when you're right. So, but useful,
Yes.
So there you
That's
go.
cool. Yeah. Another co-pilot.
Not bad.
Have we not talked about AI enough?
We haven't, so we get more.
More. Woohoo.
Well, we have also this next story is not technically AI, but the next 3 after it will.
Everything is technically AI.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, what is it? Friday, I think, is the date by which any big tech company that has been designated a gatekeeper under what's it called, the Digital Market Authority. Is that the right term? DMA.
This is the EU.
One of the EU new laws has until Friday, November, or maybe it's tomorrow, 16th. I thought it was the 16th, but whatever the date is soon, to appeal their decision on that. Some have. I think Meta this morning might have come up with something like that.
They're going to appeal it.
Well, yeah, they don't want to be because once you are designated into this category, you have to adhere to these very stringent laws. For example, if iMessage was considered a gatekeeper product, they would have to make it interoperable with Android messaging or SMS. So
nominally it is just not very good.
Yeah. So there's some big stakes here. But interestingly, Microsoft and also Google have decided not to challenge the existing designations that they have.
I don't know that they could. Where are you going to go?
I think, honestly, the reason you would do this, if you know you are, in fact, meeting the requirement to be a gatekeeper, would be to push back the time when you would have to actually adhere.
Right.
I think that would be.
Maybe unravel it a different way.
Yeah. Google has a lot more services that fall into this designation, as you might expect, between search and everything else they do. Microsoft only has a few, although I guess there are some hanging in the balance, including Bing might make the list. I don't.
All 6% of Bing.
I know. So
okay.
Yeah, EU's taking a hardline stance on this, but they came out in public and said, yeah, we're not.
I mean, the other side of the gatekeeper story is also just sort of that, sort of cementing dominance in the position too, right? When you create regulations like this, you create incumbents.
Your cameras.
Whoa.
Going haywire.
Wait a minute, the camera just did that?
It
got tired.
I don't want to look at you guys anymore.
You guys are not that good.
Wow.
So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. And then let's run through these quick. Actually, these are all Google. So Google, I'm sure it has nothing to do with Ignite, but it's announced a bunch of AI stuff this week.
Right.
Generative AI search is now coming to over 120 countries, which is kind of interesting. This is that, actually, I forget what it's called. They have a separate kind of generative AI search experience. The goal here, I assume, is to roll it into general Google search at some point. They've announced that they're going to identify any AI-based video content that comes onto YouTube. So you get a little disclaimer, kind of like you see when there's a product associated with a video. They have to put a little call out there.
Yeah, a little thing. This is a sponsored video.
Yeah, so this will be a AI sponsored video, I guess.
Doesn't this fit in with Biden's executive order as well?
Oh, it might. Yeah.
AI generated stuff.
That could be. Yeah, pretty quick if that's true. Yeah. That's why.
Of course, the EU is already headed down that path. So.
And they've had this forever. They just never wanted to put it out there. So
no.
Yeah. And then this one, I've been waiting for this. This is actually really cool. So because I've been doing all this digital decluttering stuff, I have to say one of the things that becomes really obvious when you really look at it is there's two worlds, maybe three worlds of photos for a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are the old photos from the 80s or whatever that were just paper-based or, the negatives, you scan them in.
They're in books.
Yep. They're just the way they are. There was a digital camera age, right? From the probably mid to late 90s through the
starting with the L.
Yeah, I had a bunch of them myself. I had a bunch of Canons, Kodak. I had an early Kodak. There was the Apple back in the day. I remember I had one of the first ones, quick take camera, I think it was called. And then there's the smartphone now.
Right.
And so what happens is you make that transition is you went from a roll of film, which is a very finite amount of data or pictures you could have, to a memory card, which was also finite, bigger, but finite, to a phone where you're saving it to the cloud. And it's like, who cares? You can, so you take a million. Back in the day, if I took a picture of you guys last night at some event, I'd be click once and I'd be very careful with it.
Yeah, and take
now
your
I can just do like this. So
I've watched you do it. I think that might be 20.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So Google Photos is coming out with a new feature, actually a couple features to kind of help with this, and I think it's really smart. It's supposed to be out now. I don't have it yet, but it's creating photo stacks of these events. So it looks at the time and place, and if you take 20 photos of a group of people, it will prop up the one it thinks is the best take.
Right.
And you can go in and you can change that and change what's in there. And this sounds pretty good.
This is smart.
Yeah. They're also doing auto aggregation and kind of hiding of receipts and other pictures. You take pictures of things or papers or documents and screenshots, right? Because these are things that you want in your collection, but you don't want them in your photo stream.
Yeah. I always photograph my rental car.
Yeah.
Before and after.
Every time. Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Where you parked, what you did,
And you want to keep it for some period of time.
That's right. And actually, that's part of it. You can decide to have these things auto archive after 30 days.
Right.
Which is smart. So this is, I think, is a great example.
It seems also very obvious, but I'm glad it's happening. At least it's happening.
But this is what AI is bringing us, right?
Because it can do such good image recognition. Yeah,
it's a small thing. I showed Richard earlier this folder I have of scans, where for some reason about 50% of them are not auto-rotated, right? When I switched over to Google Photos on my Gmail account, I spent 3 days getting constant notifications. Hey, some of your pictures are sideways. Hey, and you go in and it
so fix them.
It does. But sometimes one will be wrong. You're like, nope, not that one.
Right.
And so I literally spent 3 days. I would do one. I would put the phone down and go, boop, boop, boop. Oh, you have some more, and I spent 3 days on that. So the ones up in the cloud are actually rotated properly,
right?
Or most of them anyway. But you have these photos. It's like, I don't understand why there isn't a button in File Explorer to rotate. Just make it right.
It's a good AI capability. Yeah. It's like, what's the right orientation for this photo?
And it's a time saver because I could control click and right click auto, rotate right or whatever. I could, but my time is not completely invaluable. I mean,
so now you're mad that a machine model hasn't been made yet.
Right. See, that's how entitled we get that quickly.
This is the whole chair in the sky story.
Yes. Right. Yes. Yeah. I thought you were talking about the Lord God.
Yeah.
Lord of Thunder. Yeah. You're flying through the sky like Thor the Thunder God, and you're worried that it's taking a second for a message to get between you and the satellite. It's like, give it a second.
It's going to space.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yep. That's me.
All right. Xbox?
Yep.
You were just waiting for me to say that, huh?
I know. I like
Hey, Paul, what's going on in the world of Xbox?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Leo. Lots. So Microsoft announced their Black Friday stuff, and among the deals is $50 off select, I would say most, Xbox Series X and S consoles. So if you were looking to get into this ecosystem and haven't done it yet, coming up, I don't remember the exact date, but tied by probably Friday, actually.
Right.
Because, Black Friday is before Thanksgiving, like way before.
I thought, no, it was.
It always was, but it was usually the night, wasn't it? No,
it was the Friday after Thanksgiving.
It used to be. Yeah, but now we have Friday. Black Friday is a season.
Yeah. It's not, Black Friday started in September.
Yeah, it's not a date. They shouldn't call it Black Friday. Yeah. But anyway, so that's good. One of the most interesting things, and by the way, based on our reviews, the only interesting thing about Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 is that the multiplayer is exclusively remade versions of classic multiplayer maps from the original Modern Warfare 2, which is, goofy and on some level, but regarded by many Call of Duty fans to be kind of the apex of the multiplayer experience. And I love this idea. I will say, by the way, I went into the game. So for the first time since March 2nd, I think it was, I actually the other day went into the game. I entered a game. I ran around. I got killed 3 times and I left, and I haven't looked at it since. But the
reviews have been god awful for it. I've been waiting to hear what you thought.
So I don't know what to say about this. It was going to be a DLC, which I think was the right approach.
Right.
Something to do with the timing of the Microsoft acquisition. They thought, you know what? Let's go with a bang if we can, and try to turn this into a game. I don't care about single player at all. And, so it
doesn't affect the multiplayer. The reviews are for the single player campaign, right?
Yeah, I think so. It just seems like it was thrown together. I mean, they were always going to do this campaign bit. It was going to be an add-on to the, Modern Warfare campaign.
So multiplayer is still just as good, and you've got these classic maps, and that sounds pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good. I can't say that I played it enough.
14-year-olds a teabag.
Yeah, but those maps are fantastic. And it just, I actually looked at 2, but I only played for 3 seconds in 1. But they are beautiful. They're immediately recognizable. The memories of these places are, like I've said in the past, are as real as memories of any place. So it's kind of cool. Anyway, Call of Duty is not the only one doing it. Halo Infinite just released a retro playlist of multiplayer maps, all based on classic Halo 3 maps from 2007, I think it was.
That's fun. Wow.
That's really cool. Yeah, and this is it's a combination. Some of them are straight up remakes. The dynamics are a little weird, right? Because Halo Infinite doesn't really play like Halo 3, even though you look at it and you think, my God, they kind of nailed this thing. It looks like a classic Halo game.
Right.
The feel is actually quite different. So some of the maps are what they say, reimagined, right? And there's actually there's a stupid Mountain Dew tie-in I refuse to discuss, but they redid a map from Halo 2 as well that has a Mountain Dew themed name that, again, I'm not going to go into, but it's free, right? So if you own the game or if you get it through Game Pass, you can play this playlist and kind of, relive the past a little bit. It's kind of fun. There's a bunch more, it's the middle of the month, right? So we've got more Game Pass games. We have, I would say, let's see, one, two, after this, probably at least 2 more of these drops to go before we get anything from Activision Blizzard. This one is super light. It's 3 games. It's a Dune game. Roller. I don't know any of these games. So basically, this is what I have to say all the time now. I don't recognize any of these games. So
they're pretty far down the catalog these days.
Yeah, this is one of the problems that Activision Blizzard's going to solve. Right. This is going to.
Well, it's going to add a few. It'll give it maybe a year.
Well, it's going to be a good year. I think every month we're going to catalog games, older games. It's going to be
all the old hardballs and Activision made a lot of games.
Just all the old Call of Duties, right?
Yeah.
And then I think the rest of this might be, these are, non-Microsoft gaming things. So there's an OLED version of the Steam Deck coming. I think Valve announced that there wouldn't be new hardware other than this new screen for at least a year or 2, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But $549. The reviews on this are overwhelmingly positive. Actually, this seems to be the thing people were looking for. So
how much?
$549.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, 12 hours of battery life, depending on the game, et cetera. Yeah, probably 2 hours the way I play. But yeah, I mean, that's good. So that's fine. PS5 Slim, as they're calling it. It's not very slim. It's not very small.
It's kind of weird looking.
I always thought these things were weird. The PS5 to me looks like a starship or like Star Trek Klingon ship or something. Like it's a weird shape. I don't think it goes well in rooms, like living rooms and things. I don't know what they're doing, but it's slightly smaller. It's cost reduced. It's available now in the US. So if you want that. And then Sony released earnings. Actually, they did great, but they fell short of announcing that we're not actually going to hit the sales target. They
didn't actually say that part.
They addressed it, and what they said was, we don't have any changes to this. But for them to meet the target, which is 25 million units in their fiscal year, which goes from March to March, they would have to sell, let's say they sold 4.9 million units in this quarter. They only sold, 8.2 million so far in the year. So in less than, like in half a year.
Christmas, though.
I know, but it would have to be the best Christmas the PlayStation's ever had by a factor of 3. Like almost for them. It's like there's no way they're going to do this.
They're not going to make the number.
They said, we recognize that selling this is they're hitting this goal is a challenging goal.
It was the question is, do you even have that many units?
Yeah, that's a good point. Right? Yeah, I don't know.
Because if they do, they have a lot of excess units.
They're going to run into some issues when they don't hit this, right? Because that's a bad look. When they announced it, it seemed plausible. It seemed like something they might be able to do. But
predicting the future coming out of the pandemic seemed unwise.
Yeah, well, they did a better job than Microsoft of managing inventory control and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but they're
a little more integrated in their manufacturing.
Yeah. And then Amazon, I saw this and I thought, my God, is Luna gone? But no. Amazon announced or actually acknowledged they laid off about 180 employees in this game division, and they're going to refocus Prime Gaming, as it's called, just to be a better offering, I guess. I mean, so I saw this and I thought, here we go. It's like, now is Luna going to die? But there was no news along that. So there's,
the EU, England says the cloud gaming's the hottest thing out there.
Yeah, I know.
And they've got to protect
I don't understand. All right.
At least they waited until Activision Blizzard went through to announce this because it's not a problem. But there's a very confusing, this is true of Amazon in general, but there's a confusing array of services that you get as a Prime member. And then there are these upgrades, and so you could do, like, there's a free version of Amazon Music you get, but there's also upgrades you pay. So if you're a Prime member, you pay less than you would otherwise for the upgrade. And this is true in the gaming space as well. So there's a Prime gaming thing that you should look at if you're a Prime member. It's PC based, right? But there's also Luna, and then there's Luna add-ons, right? Because you can attach other subscriptions or whatever to that. So there's actually tiers of this. So it's kind of a weird. It's kind of hard to understand when you see a headline about Amazon gaming. You have to kind of sort of go look at it and say, well, what part of it are they talking about? And basically, it's the part that gives you free games every month as a Prime member. So they're going to kind of retool that. There's been no word about Luna. So Luna's still going. And
well, guys who are using it think it's really great.
I thought it was really great when I used it for 2 minutes. But yeah.
All right.
All right. There you have it. In a nutshell. Yes. Mm-hmm. So let's take a break, and then the back of the book is coming up. Tips, apps, and yes, even though they are in Seattle. And I saw you had a nice meal, it looked like, with Donna Sakar and Scott Hanselman, some nice people. Yeah. Maybe you enjoyed some brown liquor there, and you'd like to share it with us. I'm just thinking.
Oh, there's a story, Leo.
There's a story.
Good. All that coming up in just a bit. But first, a word from our sponsor. Our episode today brought to you by Melissa, the data quality experts for over 38 years. Melissa has helped companies harness the value of their customer data to drive insight, to maintain data quality, and to support global intelligence. Look, all data goes bad, expires. In fact, more than you think, up to 25% a year. Having clean, verified customer data helps your customers have a smooth, error-free purchase experience. Saves you money, saves you time. I mean, it's good all around. And Melissa's flexible. It fits any business model. See, they've been doing this for a long time. They've been verifying addresses, as I mentioned, for 38 years in over 240 countries. And they ensure that only valid billing and shipping addresses even get into your system. They have an API if you want to use it. You can use it on-prem as a SaaS application. You can even have FTP data lists up to them and securely and download them. But the API is cool because you can put that into your onboarding software. So your customer service reps or your customers actually it saves them keystrokes, and it makes sure there's no fumble fingering on the street or the zip or the phone number. It goes, oh, you mean this? And they say yes, and it fills it in. That's really nice. Melissa's international address validation cleans and corrects street addresses worldwide, automatically, get this, transliterating from one system to another, like, as an example, from Chinese to Cyrillic or English. Focus your spending on where it matters the most. Melissa offers free trials, sample codes, flexible pricing, an ROI guarantee, and unlimited technical support to its customers all around the world. Now, once you're signed up, it's easy to integrate Melissa's other services. They have Melissa Identity Verification. This more and more is important, which helps you increase compliance, reduce fraud, and improve the onboarding experience. Melissa's Enrich. Fantastic way to gain insight into who and where your customers are. It's always better to, especially this time of year, to reach out to existing customers. They already know you, and they're probably buying for others right now, right? Melissa's Education Portal is available to individuals with a valid EDU email address. Oh, this is new. I've never seen this. So if you have an EDU address, or let's say you're a data scientist, it's designed to introduce future data scientists to the inherent value of data and its global relevance in an ever-increasing range of industries and applications. That's so cool. Check out the EDU Education Portal. You can also do it on your Android or iOS devices. The Melissa Lookups app is free on iOS and Android. You don't even have to sign up. You can validate addresses and personal identity in the U.S. or Canada. It's great for your Christmas card list, right? Check global phone numbers to find caller, carrier, and geographic information. You can use it to check IP addresses globally and a lot more. That's free. Melissa Lookups. And of course, your data is safe with Melissa. The highest level of security status available. They're actually FedRAMP certified, which now government agencies care about that, but everybody gets the benefit of it, right? Because you've got to have a superior level of security to get FedRAMP authorization. They're also GDPR, CCPA compliant. They meet SOC 2, HIPAA, high trust standards. Look, they do everything right. This is their thing. They love this. They're passionate about it. And you can sure benefit from it. Make sure your customer contact data is up to date. Get started today with 1,000 records, clean for free. Melissa.com/twit. Melissa, MELISSA.com/twit. Thank you, Melissa. We appreciate your support. Now let's get back to Seattle. All right, time for the back of the book. Let's kick it off with a tip of the week from Paul Thurrott.
Yeah. since we started this podcast, we have become surrounded by people.
Well, it's lunch.
Oh,
It eventually the session.
they're not looking for
it's
you.
like
they're looking for a roast beef
Oh
sandwich.
no, they're looking at us.
Okay.
Their backs
Yeah.
to us.
Well,
and they're eating
because
And
we
it-
have chairs and they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are sitting on the floor.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just weird how crowded it got. So I mentioned the Xbox Black Friday sale. Google is also having one. Theirs starts on Friday. I don't know how long it goes because they didn't say, but if you were in the market for Pixel or other Google hardware and haven't bought yet, look at this because Pixel 8
That
Pro
might be me. I have a 6.
Yep.
And the 8, by all accounts.
is fantastic.
Oh, it's amazing.
I don't know that I want the Pro. I think the Pro's
You,
good.
you can you can take your temperature with it.
Yeah, that seems like a useful feature. Like, how hot is my coffee? Oh, it's the same temperature as coffee. That's nice. Also, don't get it too close because you'll fry the camera lens there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the prices there look great across the board. It's Pixel Bud and A series and Pro are on sale or will be on sale. Tablet Fold is $400 off.
Wow.
Wow.
The prices are actually fantastic. So I definitely look.
You know, I don't have to do This Week in Google now because you've pretty much done all the Google stories.
Yeah, I like. Actually,
suddenly it's this Week in Windows Google.
Yeah. So I did this on purpose. I'm trying to ruin your other podcasts.
Yeah, thank you. No, please do.
Yeah.
Be my guest.
So,
Although if I can't ruin them, I don't know who can. But okay, go ahead.
all right. Well, I assume you guys will be talking about what's going on with Fitbit because there was that alarming bit of news last week where Fitbit was
I wear a
pulling-
Fitbit.
Yeah.
And they dropped a bunch of countries.
Yeah.
Including
And
Mexico.
Mexico, right? Which is, I think I told you the story because my wife, on one trip, we tried to find some accessory, like a charging accessory, and they were not available in that country anywhere. And we looked a lot of. And since then, we've come, we can use Amazon in Mexico. It works fine. And she broke her, I guess, a Versa. I think she had a Versa 2. And the screen literally popped off. It was crazy. And she wanted to, buy a new one. And it was not offered in Mexico. So through Amazon, we were able to get it from the United States. It took 2 days instead of 1 to arrive. So, Mexico, third world country. But anyway, it was it was not Mexico. And of course, now they kind of went official with it. So I guess they're scaling back.
And one argument is they're getting ready to kill Fitbit.
That's the worry I have. And we talked about this privately, but I think there is not only a market for the tracker, like you have a charge tracker.
Yeah.
The, Pixel Watch, which only gets, 20 hours of battery life or whatever it is.
And it's big. Like what I like about the charge is it's small.
But I also think there's room in the middle for a simpler smartwatch that has great battery life, like 6 days, like the Versa and the what is the other one called? The Sense get. But they haven't been updated in a year, and I bet they will not be.
They just made a charge 6. That's the
yes, that was the
the other argument is that they are trying to streamline, and their service centers they're going to keep the Google ones.
Yeah.
And so because what they did was they cut the countries that the Google Watch wasn't sold in.
Yes, that's
right.
That's
they lined it up with what Google already has. So I'm thinking they're cutting a bunch of the Fitbit expenses.
I think so.
To actually keep it alive.
Yeah.
And so they lined up the countries the same as the watch.
I'm just curious what the Fitbit lineup looks like on the other side, because like I said, there's definitely a market for this. And I wouldn't be surprised at all from a political power perspective that the Google Watch guys will lynch anything watch line. Yeah.
And say, go make
except
stuff
that
away.
On their way to doing that, their thing will run out of power and they'll forget what they were doing because their watch doesn't last even for a single day.
No, you need to have a couple of
the
chargers
problem.
around you for that.
Yep.
The wife switched to, she likes them.
Yeah.
But I like the charger. It lasts for days.
That's the one I use normally, the 6, the 5 rather. And it's great.
I think the 6 is on sale right now for a good price too.
Oh, that could be. Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. So that's happening. And then the app pick, I'm going to go with Microsoft Loop. I think this is the time to start experimenting with it and trying it. I'm going to see if using it with my commercial account makes a difference. And we'll see.
I just think that Windows blurs that line so hard you don't even know what you're using if you're using it as a home product or
that's true. No, that's true. Yeah. I mean, when I heard that it was hitting GI, I installed it on my new phone, which I hadn't done before.
Yeah.
And I signed in with my Microsoft account to see how that would go. No problem. It appears, it appears like it would for a commercial account where it looks like, they advertise how features work and everything. And that was not the experience before. So, the app's been updated. So we'll see.
Yeah.
They wouldn't release it early. I mean, it's Microsoft. Come on.
Crazy time. All right, I guess it's my turn.
Yeah.
On Run As this week, I have one of my regulars, Richard Hicks, who I usually count on for VPN services like access services, all the different Microsoft's made so many different flavors of it. And he's written all the books on it to the point where Microsoft calls him to explain their product to him. Love it. But this, I had been chatting with him elsewhere. And we talked about Entra, which is just a frustrating name. Like, what is this?
Right.
And most people are thinking it's just Azure Active Directory, which is in there. But Richard had a really good take on, there's an awful lot of work going on to sort of right size authentication across the board, AAD being a part of it, but also application authentication, like all of these other pieces. And we ended up in a long conversation about conditional access.
Yes. Oh my God. That's a term from
Yes. It's such
20 years ago.
Well, and so most companies that I've dealt with that are in this space have conditional access set up for M365. Like when you turn on MFA, which you probably did if it's an IT person, because you don't get cyber insurance without it, you're setting up some conditional access rules, and you can advance them. You can say only these countries, or only, put additional requirements on if they're out of location, or what's the response to a hardware change, like all of these sorts of rules around it. Which is cool. It's just that that's just for M365. What happens when you want it to work on an app, or you're using sysadmin's accounts, remote, and so forth? And one of the points he made is that conditional access is now everywhere. Like what Entra is really about is taking these kinds of standards and applying them to every authentication scenario. So if you've set it up well in one place, you've set it up well in every place.
So it's not just a stupid name.
No.
It's also,
it's actually, I feel like this is right size. We've had a long period in the cloud where they're just hurling stuff at the wall to see what will stick. And now what we're starting to see is that they've picked up the stuff that's stuck and are spreading it around.
Jeez. Like a child.
Yeah, exactly.
Spearing pieces on the wall.
But hey, conditional access is really powerful,
right?
Where it doesn't get in your way when you're doing your usual thing. When you're on your usual machine in your usual location with your usual login for your usual work, it's almost invisible. You're in. It's fine. You travel, it asks you a bunch of new questions. It asks you to re-authenticate, those kinds of things. And so it's all about resisting the potential exploiters. And the fact that you could spend the time or hire a pro to set up a set of conditional access rules for your company, and then you just apply that policy to your hybrid apps running on-prem, right? Would follow those same rules. Like we'd get all of that. That's where we went on that show. Like it became, to me, really compelling. It's like, oh, it's really worth spending time with conditional access now, because it's not just about one thing. It's about authentication across the board.
Cool.
I look forward to hearing it.
Yeah.
Richard Hicks.
I just finished listening to your Jeff Fritz episode.
Oh, yes, on DNR.
And .NET. Yeah.
Nice.
That was our .NET Conf episode.
Yep.
Runasradio.com. Now, you said you had a story to tell.
Therein lies the tale.
Oh, boy.
All right. Well, I actually had this story comes in several parts.
I just want to point out, by the way, you're running right now Microsoft Loop.
Yep. This is me
like
using
that's
Loop
normal.
For my work. I moved all of the whiskey stuff to Loop.
Well, should we move away from Notion?
Not yet. Let's.
Okay.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Right. So we've talked about Maker's Mark before, and it's been one of my favorite whiskeys for a long time. Mostly because when I was one of the tours I did, I think it was back in 2013, where I just came out of it liking the product even more. Yeah. Now, Mark is not one of the legendary whiskeys.
No, but you know what?
It hasn't been around for forever.
Everywhere, and it's just a high quality thing.
It's a nice quality bar whiskey, right? At a reasonable price. T. Williams, Bill Samuels Sr. started it in 1958. Well, he's a little earlier than that. He bought the Burke's Distillery in Loretto, Kentucky. Took a few years to get up and running. And from day one, he did this hand-dipped red wax.
That's the thing that's cool about it, right? The red wax top.
Is the wax top. And so they only started in 1958. It was an older distillery that they refurbished and so forth. And it went through the normal owner. The 70s was a tough time for whiskey. And so they were sold to Hiram Walker and Sons in 81. And then that gets rolled up into Allied Dominic. That becomes Pernod Ricard. And then there's some conflict. So they decide they're going to spin off the brand Maker's Mark. They sell it to Fortune Brands. which then got broken up into some antitrust stuff in 2011. And so finally they make a new company called Beam Incorporated after Jim Beam. So it's owned by the same group that owned Jim Beam, now owns Maker's Mark. It's just these iterations. And that was right around the time that the third generation that Rob Samuels took over. So it was his grandfather that started it. Then his father had run it through those difficult times. And then as it got turned into part of Beam Inc., it was very Kentucky centric. Rob was running it. And then in 2014, they merged with Suntory to become Beam Suntory, which is the current structure that it's in right now.
Which sounds like it would be bad.
And there's an interesting conversation there about the effects of having a larger company.
Right.
Because for a long time, Mark made exactly one product, Mark. Right. In 2010, they made Maker's 46. And Maker's 46 is Mark, except that they finish it with French staves. So you can't call it bourbon if you put it in anything other than American oak, right?
Right.
So what they figured out is you take a few French staves and you hang them on a food safe
please.
Inside the barrel. You get this little different flavor.
This is meeting the letter of the law,
letter of not the spirit. Yeah.
And again, I did the tour back in 2013. They have two lines, so two sets of stills. They use a high column still for the initial distillation and a pot still for finishing. I've tasted the raw product in both scenarios. I've tasted the wort. They have a wooden rick house that has a rotator on it, so the barrels sit in racks, and the bottom at regular intervals every year or so, they take the bottom barrels and move them up to the top to sort of even the aging. And the big thing they talked about is that whiskey and aged in that part of the world in the wooden building like that it's ready when it's ready, but it's ready somewhere between 5 and 6 years.
Yeah.
And one of the things they would demonstrate for us is they give us a taste of an over oaked or an over aged version of their bourbon.
I love this term. Is this possible?
Yeah. Well, and part of this I think is people's tastes have changed.
Yeah.
But this was very much their position. And remember, I did this in 2013, just before the Beam Suntory merger, right? Mm-hmm. And so, okay, I really like what you guys are doing. Yes, they still hand dip all the bottles. You could hand dip your own bottle if you like. They'll do a custom label for you. And I have a bottle. It says for Richard Campbell. It's a hand dip bottle. It's awesome.
That's great.
And this year, we suddenly hear about this cellar aged version. Okay, but let's back up.
Yeah.
So last time we saw each other in person was the cruise.
Yep.
Right. And now here we are hanging out. We're back in Seattle. We're back at a conference. It's kind of the old times. And so right away you're like, we should go to Daniels. Like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
We should go to Daniels. So
you're not an effective blocker of bad behavior.
No. Let's be clear. I'm a facilitator.
Blocker.
Talk a little bit about.
He's like, let's do something more responsible than that. No,
that's not where I went. Like, you know what if we go, the nice thing about go to Daniels, we didn't even have to go outside, but we started in the bar.
Oh, you were right on it.
Out front, the Rick House bar is right out front of, and it is literally the shared bar with the Daniels bar.
Yep.
Now, look, I'm a professional alcoholic, so I do study what's on the shelf because it tells me about the bar pretty quickly. So I noticed they put Scotch on one tier, they put bourbon on another tier, and their Scotch collection's okay, right? There's a few Macallans. There were no Dalmores up there. There was a Glenmorangie. I'm like, that's okay. The whiskey collection, the bourbon collection was exceptional. Yeah. And it's things I look for. So it's like they clearly had the food and beverage manager clearly has a relationship with the Sazerac distillery because there was Blanton's and Eagle Rare and Bullet. All
Bullet rye and bourbon.
Right. And then they had a bunch of rye. And they had the mixer special rye. Like, those are difficult whiskeys to get. So I'm like, okay, this whiskey collection is serious. And we're going to go have dinner.
Yep.
And I figure we're going to finish with whiskey. So
2 Manhattans first, and then
a couple Manhattans, crisis with a credit card. They lost his credit card. They dropped it down behind him.
Lose it. You could see it. It was just 20 feet down in a pit.
Couldn't get to him. And so then we go in for dinner, and right away to the guy who's seating us, it's like, I'll be getting into your whiskey collection later. And he's like, oh, I'm here to help. No problem.
Right.
And then we sit down and like look at the wine list. And the wine list is thin. And right away I'm thinking, oh, we're having steaks.
It was thin in certain areas.
Yeah. We're having steaks. You want a big fat one. And I'm like, okay, well, let's go Italian.
Yep.
Let's get an Amarone. There's no Amarones on the menu.
There were no Montepulcianos.
But there were 3 Barolos.
I know. Very strange.
And so now the sommelier comes. So I'm harassing him about the
looked like kind of a mob boss, didn't he?
Yeah, he had that mob boss vibe. But, he's got a shtick. He was working the shtick. But we were being checked out.
Sure.
Right? And that's when, now he steered us over to a Carbonera in Chile. And part of me is like,
I know.
I've told him what wine I wanted.
And it's just,
He's now finding me a comparably priced wine that he wants me to try.
I've had experience, like my wife and I tried Chenin Blanc for the first time based on the recommendation of a guy we know from a restaurant in Washington, D.C. And now we actually seek out this wine.
Yeah.
So,
and generally speaking, if the sommelier's got some gauge on you and he suggests the wine, you should try it.
Yeah.
He's not going to steer you wrong. And if he did, it's his fault.
Do you ever feel like a whale in Las Vegas? Like they see you coming through the door and they're like, all right, let's get someone on these guys.
Well, and there's certain bars I go to enough that I'm in Vegas. Those guys know me and they know that I want the back shelf stuff.
Yeah.
And so the real question is, I asked him, is there back shelf wine? Like, what are you telling me? And he goes, no, there's back shelf whiskey.
Yep. And
so then I started naming a few and we went to Pappy, of course. He goes, yes, I have 12, 13, and 15.
I don't,
right. And I'm like, okay.
Yep.
But I knew it was going to be pricey. I think he wanted 150 a shot.
Yep.
For the 15.
So we save money technically.
Yeah. Well, and this the thing is, I know that bottle's $50.
Yeah.
Right. But you can't get one. Anyway, now we go into the weirder whiskeys, and he pulled the Willet Purple Top, which we'll talk about next week, and this Mark Cellar Aged.
Right.
Now this is a blend of 11 and 12-year-old Maker's Mark. But wait, I did a tour 10 years ago where they told me, oh no, after 6 years, it's overaged. So what's going on? What's happened is that they aren't using the rickhouse. They're still doing 4 or 5 years in the rickhouse. And then they're moving the barrels into literally a limestone cellar.
Yeah.
And so now it sits in a limestone cellar for this extended period. And it's interesting that they're using 11s and 12s.
So the rickhouse is warm.
Because it's wood.
Yeah.
Right.
And this place is obviously cool.
What it is steady. Yeah. Right. It's probably 68 degrees Fahrenheit in there, steady the whole time. And so it's more tolerant to time on wood. You're not getting as much breathing. You're not getting as much loss.
I would just say that what happened there was pretty close to perfection.
It's a very, very nice whiskey.
It was really good. And it's cask strength. I didn't notice.
And it's bottle of cask strength, which seems to be around 57%.
Yeah. It was a bit expensive.
It was a little pricey because you can't find it.
Yeah.
But Richard was paying, so why not?
Not exactly.
It was only released on the market earlier this year, and it initially was priced at $150 a bottle.
Yeah.
And I found a couple of liquor stores with the listing still, but they have none. Right. I can only find a bottle. If you said, go get a bottle right now, there are specialty whiskey shops that have it. Say they have it for sale.
Yeah.
$600.
Yeah. That was the number. Right. I can't believe I remember anything from that night, but yeah, that's what I thought it was, $600.
Yeah. So that is the story of Maker's Mark Cellar Aged.
It's possible
good.
I fell asleep at Richard's room later that night, but the point is, I hadn't seen him in a while.
Yeah, there was a few cocktails and a bottle of wine. But
there was some great pictures too of you from Charlotte Restaurant later that I really enjoyed. There's Donna Sakar and Scott Hanselman. Looked like you guys had fun. So you're having a good time.
Yeah.
Donna's always
I notably did not drink a lot that night, actually. That was the next night.
That was the next night. That's what I figured.
I always mature on day 2.
And this is day 3.
Yeah. Everything's good. Everything's good.
What fun. Maker's Mark Cellar Aged 2023.
Yeah, still no age declaration on it, but it
says on the site though 11 and 12, right? So
yeah, if this was list price, you'd be stupid not to buy it.
Go buy it. If you find $150 bottle, grab it.
I
should be suspicious.
Really, it's that good.
It really was good.
It's an excellent bourbon. Right. As good as anything.
Do you think Bevmo would have it if I run over?
No. I checked. Yeah. You can go online and find a specialty shop. They'll sell it to you for $600.
Wow.
But it's $600 is too much.
It is.
It's ridiculous.
And I've seen on TikTok, I think they actually dip it in wax. Like they take the bottle and they dip it in wax.
All those bottles, every one of those bottles is handmade.
So it's all unique, which is kind of cool. I really like that.
But it's also Beam. There's a big story about Beam Suntory pushed them to make this.
Right.
Oh, really? They didn't want to, huh?
They never wanted to make it. So actually, this is an example of the big company having a positive impact on this little local.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. What did I do? I chopped you guys in half. I'm doing something strange. Let's go back.
Right.
Push the wrong button. Richard's dying, and all of a sudden, boom, you're in a split. Well, I'm just trying to get Paul on the left and you on the and Richard on the right, but it just won't work. So we just have to. There's a few OCD people in our audience who are just dying right about now.
We should have been sitting in the other seats, I think. We upset everybebody.
We upset everybody.
I think that's part of the appeal of the travel.
Yeah.
You know, things are going to mix it up.
What's going to happen.
Yep.
All right. I managed to get through my bit before I trashed my voice.
I've been there. I'm going to let you go. Richard Campbell, runasradio.com. And is .NET Conf done?
Yep.
Over.
No. It's doing its 24-hour run right now. It'll go for the next 2 days.
Okay. So can people see that online?
Yeah. And
it's on YouTube and .NET Conf.
Okay.
Yeah. And the stuff they've already done, like the keynote and whatever, it's all there,
it's there
archived, so you can watch any of it.
And of course, Ignite is it wrapping today or tomorrow?
Or actually Friday.
Technically Friday. Yeah.
Friday.
It's
half day on Friday.
Okay.
Same thing. Although they're not actually recording every single session.
No, it is sort of a mix.
Yeah, mostly.
I wonder if they're dark gear.
Yeah.
There's a lot of breakout room.
Very nice. Paul Thurrott is at thurrott.com. His book's leanpub.com. And are you going back to Macungie? You're going to go to the beautiful ABE airport?
Yes, I am. And we're moving next week, this coming weekend. So next show, I'll be in a new place.
You're moving again?
Awesome.
Oh, is this a final?
A final? There's no such thing as final. Yeah. My final move will be to the ground. Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, there you go.
And on Friday, I got to do patch and switch.
Yeah.
And then I'm going right here, and then I'm going to drive back up.
Yeah. Joey and Rick. Those are two of the guys in those photos. Great guys.
And they do their own show, and I crash it every so often. So we do one together.
Well, we'll look forward to that. Oh, look.
We did it.
We got you fixed.
Yeah.
Let's just start over. So Microsoft announced.
But you have to remember, Paul, to look left, not right.
Yes, right. I know.
Because it's very confusing for you.
I can't do that.
And Richard, you look right, not left. Because that's actually how they're really arranged.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
I almost had you guys squished together a little bit more, but I don't think you like each other that much. So thank you.
Well, got a no touching policy, but yeah, it's fine.
We will be back next week. I will not. No, I will. I'll be back next week. I'm going to take the week after off. But I will be back next week, and we will be back for you with Windows Weekly. Some of you have noted we don't stream live off the website anymore. It's on YouTube Live when we are actually doing a show. So it won't be live until the show begins. The best thing to do is subscribe to our Twitch channel, youtube.com/twit. And you'll get a notification when we go live. And that means, and you can then watch the show, which usually is on a Wednesday around 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1900 UTC. And if you are watching live, by all means, either join us in the Discord. We stream it live there, too, in one of the stages. I think it's a little better quality on YouTube, but you get to choose. Or, of course, in our IRC. After the fact, best way to watch on demand, either go to the website, twit.tv/WW, or the YouTube channel. I mean, those on-demand shows are all on YouTube. So, for instance, today we had some technical difficulties. We missed the beginning of the show for the live stream, but you can go watch the whole thing on YouTube. Or, best thing, subscribe, and then you don't even have to think about it. Now, they're telling me that some podcast apps stop downloading if you don't listen to an episode. So you might go back and go, where's all the episodes? So do it, but Pocket Casts is not. If you explicitly tell Pocket Casts, download them all, it will, and then you'll have them. So even if you miss an episode, you can go back and catch it. So, but whatever you use, we want you to subscribe, if you will. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time on Windows Weekly. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Have some more Maker's Mark.
Sorry, I'm supposed to look at it. Thank you, Leo. Thank you.
Where am I? I'm over here.
I don't know where is I can hear his voice.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief of Ad Astra Magazine, and each week I join with my co-host to bring you This Week in Space, the latest and greatest news from the final frontier. We talk to NASA chiefs, space scientists, engineers, educators, and artists, and sometimes we just shoot the breeze over what's hot and what's not in space, books, and TV. And we do it all for you, our fellow true believers. So whether you're an armchair adventurer or waiting for your turn to grab a slot in Elon's Mars rocket, join us on This Week in Space and be part of the greatest adventure of all time.